Chapter 2857. It wasn't that Milo hadn't considered fighting Qin Zhao head-on. However, he doubted if he could take a punch from Qin Zhao. After all, he didn't have Baldur's undying body. Then, Qin Zhao tossed Milo Tanzik Williams onto Sabonis's back. He finally had the chance to sit on the dragon's back. It wasn't a riding position, but at least it satisfied his curiosity. As for the others, Qin Zhao couldn't be bothered. He just left Falui Lysander and Ryan Vilest where they were. There were also the remaining subordinates of Milo Tanzik Williams. Don't mess around. To tell you the truth, I'm working for that man. Falui Lysander looked at the inhuman people warily. These people were insignificant to Milo Tanzik Williams and Qin Zhao. But to normal people like them, they could basically kill a child with one slap. In fact, these people didn't have the intention to fight either. After all, Milo Tanzik Williams had been taken away by them. Right now, they had no interest at all. It was as if their fathers had died. Moreover, they could tell that Falui Lysander and Ryan Vilest knew Qin Zhao. Regardless of whether they knew each other or not, if they were targeted by such people, they wouldn't be able to survive even if they had a few lives. Milo Tanzik Williams didn't know where Qin Zhao was taking him. Anyway, he was on the dragon's back. He had recovered some of his divine power. But facing Qin Zhao, he really didn't have the courage to resist. Sabonis flew in the sky for half an hour and entered the LA area. Of course, Sabonis didn't enter the city. Qin Zhao used air refraction to avoid the radar. But it wasn't very safe. He might still be exposed. So, it was better to avoid densely populated areas. Sabonis flew directly into the desert area. Finally, Sabonis landed. Qin Zhao carried Milo Williams and jumped down. At the same time, he told Sabonis to return to the Supernatural Organization's headquarters. After entering the underground base, they finally reached the bottom after many twists and turns. I think you've mostly recovered. Walk by yourself. Qin Zhao tossed Milo Tanzik Williams onto the ground. Milo Tanzik Williams's heart was in his throat. No matter how one looked at it, this gloomy underground base looked like a place where anti-human experiments were conducted. Moreover, the silence here was terrifying. It made Milo Tanzik Williams have a lot of bad thoughts. He wanted to run, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to take Qin Zhao's punch. At the lowest level of the base, an electronic door finally appeared. Qin Zhao entered a few passwords and the door opened. Unlike the outside, the laboratory inside the door was very spacious and bright. However, there was no one there. It was still very empty. At this moment, the door of the room in front of them opened. Bifla walked out. He looked at Qin Zhao and then at Milo Tanzik Williams, who was behind him. Who is he? Test subject no. 2, Qin Zhao said casually. Oh. Bifla could not help but look at Milo Tanzik Williams seriously. For the time being, he did not notice anything special about Milo Tanzik Williams. He used to be Ares' servant. I brought him here to see Ares. They haven't seen each other for many years, so they must miss each other. Hearing Qin Zhao's words, Milo Tanzik Williams felt a chill in his heart. Bifla was even more interested in Milo. Judging from Qin Zhao's tone, this person seemed to have a lot of stories with Ares. Qin Zhao pushed open the door of a laboratory. Ares, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary were all inside. They did not look like they were doing experiments at all. It was more like they were chatting about family matters. They sat in their chairs and chatted freely. When Milo Tanzik Williams was brought in, Ares looked up at him. I guessed that you would be brought here soon. My guess was right, Milo. Milo Tanzik Williams looked at Ares with a complicated and slightly awkward expression. He did not know how to address Aries. Should he continue to call him master? He could not. After all, he had betrayed Aries. But calling him by his name, that seemed very inappropriate. So, he stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Of course, the others were not awkward at all. Especially Chen Zhao and Bifla. They were looking forward to a good show. Unfortunately, they were disappointed. There was no intense conflict between the two. Especially Aries, his reaction was too calm. So calm that it was unacceptable. Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Blood Mary still did not know who Milo Tanzik Williams was. Aries, aren't you going to introduce him? Milo Tanzik Williams, Aries said. He used to be my servant. He swore eternal loyalty to me, and then he stole my divine power. If I had fought Mr. Chen at my peak, he might not have been able to defeat me easily. Looks like you're not completely unconcerned. You're still holding a grudge against him, right? As a traitor, he ended up in the same situation as me. Of course I should be happy, Aries said matter-of-factly. Aries looked Milo Tanzik Williams up and down. And he should be your senior on the path to godhood. He has a lot of research value. Aries said in a gloating tone. Milo Tanzik Williams' face darkened. His divine power has changed beyond recognition. Looks like he tried many things in the past 2 years. Whether he succeeded or failed, he's very valuable, Aries said, still adding fuel to the fire. Everyone, I'm just a failure. I have no value at all, Milo Tanzik Williams said, pointing at Aries. He's a real god. He's the most valuable one. Aries still had that kind of indifferent attitude. You don't have to tell them that. They all know it. But I'm still happy that someone I hate has ended up like me. Aries was sitting here and chatting calmly because his divine power had been completely sealed. It was sealed by the 3 most powerful and knowledgeable people in the world. In terms of power, they could even be considered 3 extremely powerful gods. So, if it was not necessary, Aries did not want to struggle anymore. In this situation, he was happy to have another person who shared the same fate. Especially when this person was a traitor that he could not live under the same sky with. Especially when this person was a traitor that he could not live under the same sky with. Of course, as a god. Aries did not lose his dignity as a god most of the time. Even when he lost, Aries accepted it calmly. He did not beg for mercy, nor did he give up. Although he did not accept it gladly, at least he had calmness and rationality that most people did not have. Chapter 28:58. Of course, the main reason for Aries' calmness was the past few days. He only accepted questions from Chen Zhao, Zhang Tianyi, Bifla, and the 23rd Blood Mary. Most of the time, it was just peaceful communication. They didn't really slice him up. However, Aries wasn't sure how long this method of research would last. If they still couldn't get the results they wanted before then, he would probably face a real slicing study. At this time, Milo Tanzik Williams's arrival clearly took some of Aries' pressure off. Zhang, put a seal on him, Chen Zhao said, pointing at Milo Tanzik Williams. Soon, Milo Tanzik Williams's power was sealed. Soon, Milo Tanzik Williams's divine power was sealed. Sealing him was much easier than sealing Aries. Aries was a true god. He wasn't any weaker than anyone present. Even in his weakened state, he couldn't be underestimated. But Milo Tanzik Williams was different. He was only powerful compared to ordinary people. But to the few people present, each of them could crush him with a single hand. No one knew how long Aries' seal could last. As for Milo Tanzik Williams, it was basically a seal that lasted until the end of time. Milo Tanzik Williams sat down on an empty chair. The others also returned to their seats. The atmosphere was more like a tea party. "Mr. Milo, tell us about your plan to become a god," Chen Zhao said first. Milo Tanzik Williams hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he said, "In the beginning, I found information about Ares's tomb in a diary left behind by an elder in my family. At the time, I hadn't come into contact with the spiritual world, so I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe in the existence of gods and ghosts, and I didn't believe that Ares's tomb was real either. But I thought that I might be able to find something valuable in this so-called tomb, so I sent people to look for it. Later on, I finally found Ares' tomb after a few twists and turns and woke him up from his deep sleep." As he spoke, Milo Tanzik Williams glanced at Ares and continued, "Then, he showed me extraordinary power and subdued me. He made me his spokesperson in the mortal world and gave me a divine power seed." Seed of divine power. Everyone looked at Ares. "What is a divine power seed?" Ares replied, "First of all, humans cannot become the carrier of divine power. It requires a special bloodline and group of people to become a carrier, such as the descendants of gods or special bloodlines. If there are neither of these, then there is only a third option, and that is through the seed of divine power. To put it simply, it is a transformation process. The divine power seed can transform an ordinary person into a young god, which is the most basic divine body. It can basically satisfy the two conditions of carrying and using divine power." "Can the divine body grow?" Chen Zhao asked. "Yes, I have a mature divine body," Ares said. "And he accepted my seed of divine power, so he can receive my gift of divine power." "And then you gave him the divine power?" "More accurately, I borrowed it," Ares answered. "In the first year, I used Ares's divine power to do a lot of things. Some of them were his, and some of them were mine. I was not satisfied with the divine power I borrowed from him. I began to interact with people in the spiritual world, and then I met Balder." Everyone looked at Ares. Ares could feel everyone's gazes. Surprised, he asked, "What's wrong? What's wrong with Balder?" "You don't know him?" Chen Zhao asked. "Should I know him?" "Fine, you indeed shouldn't know him. After all, they were from different god systems and didn't live in the same era. Moreover, Ares had clearly just woken up. Balder and the Norse gods should have appeared while he was asleep. Moreover, the name Bader was not a very rare name in the West. I think my contact with him was all arranged by him. I don't know when he noticed me," Milo Tanzik Williams said. Milo Tanzik Williams said with a tinge of annoyance in his tone. No one knew what he was regretting. He said that he's an expert in this field. Through his research on me, he discovered that I have a certain connection with Ares. I can borrow divine power from him, and Ares can also take back the divine power he lent me. He calls this connection the divine power hub, but he said that he found a way to forcefully reverse this master-slave relationship. That way, I can borrow Ares' divine power endlessly, and Ares can't take it back. Is this the truth behind your divine power being stolen? Ares shrugged helplessly. This method was developed by the Olympian gods. I never thought that there would be a loophole, nor did I expect that someone could use this method to counter me. Who is Balder? A god, the god of light in Norse mythology. He's not from the same race as you. So he's also a god. Ares found this result a little easier to accept. However, although Balder has extraordinary abilities, he still can't completely solve a problem, which is the carrier of divine power. Although Milo can steal my divine power, he can't produce divine power himself. It takes at least 1,000 years for a divine power seed to mature, so the divine power that Milo can steal is very limited. However, he's also a smart man. He knows how to squander my divine power and keep me in a weak state. As he spoke, Ares gave Milo Tanzik Williams a look of approval. Balder isn't completely unable to solve this problem, Milo Tanzik Williams said. Oh. He has a way. Ares couldn't stay calm. After all, if it was just a problem of stealing divine power, Ares could still remain calm. After all, it would take Milo Tanzik Williams more than 1,000 years to truly grow into a mature divine body. And in these 1,000 years, as long as Ares found Balder, or Ares asked Shilai Wenger for help to dissolve their relationship, the problem would be solved. However, Milo Tanzik Williams said that he could completely solve the problem of a mature divine body. Then, for Ares, these 1,000 years would be gone. It's very simple. Find a carrier with primitive divine power, or rather, a divine artifact. As long as I obtain the divine power, I can become a real god. Not only that, I can also plunder Ares' divine power and become a god with 2 divine powers. Chapter 28:59. Simple. Well, that was what Milo Tanzik Williams thought. Although he did not succeed, what is a primordial divine right? Can a god have more than one divine right? Milo Tanzik Williams did not answer. Instead, Ares answered, a primordial divine right is the key to becoming a god. It is born from heaven and earth. With a primordial divine right, one has the qualifications to become a god. Then, one can use their own understanding of the laws to integrate into the primordial divine right. Finally, a divine right that is suitable for oneself is born. Then, it is integrated with one's body to become a god. So, is there any difference between your Olympian gods and Mr. Milo's method of becoming a god? It is not certain whether his method will succeed, so I do not know what the difference is. Ares looked at Milo Tanzik Williams and said, in addition, he wants to use this method to plunder my theocracy and then obtain 2 theocracies. In theory, it is feasible, but he has obviously fallen into a misunderstanding. Having more theocracies is not necessarily better than having a single theocracy, unless it is a theocracy of complementary attributes. Among the Olympian gods, there are many who have more than one theocracy, but those gods are not necessarily stronger than me. Since a primordial divine right is born from heaven and earth, is there any way to obtain it? You Olympian gods have so many gods. Don't tell me that all of them are obtained by luck. There are no more than 3 ways to obtain a primordial divine right. One is to have a source. There is one on Mount Olympus, and it is the golden apple tree controlled by Gaia, Ares replied. Ares replied, the golden apple tree is the embodiment of the laws of heaven and earth. It is also the main way for the Olympian gods to become gods. However, the golden apple tree can only produce very few golden apples, and the cycle is very long. The second method is bloodline inheritance. The descendants of gods have a chance of having a primordial divine right in their descendants' bodies. This kind of god is a natural god. For example, Apollo, Athena, and I were born as gods. However, the probability of this is very small. Our father, Zeus, has countless illegitimate children, but only the 3 of us have become gods. Our brother, Hercules, is a demigod. He also has a primordial divine right in his body, but because half of his bloodline is human, it is destined that he cannot perfectly integrate the primordial divine right with himself. So, he can only be a demigod. The third method is inheritance. When a god falls, the primordial divine right will degenerate into a primordial divine right and then return to heaven and earth. However, through some special methods, the primordial divine right can be intercepted and given to another person. The conditions for this method are relatively simple, but there are also disadvantages. The primordial divine right of another person will always be another person's primordial divine right. It cannot be perfectly integrated with oneself. Ares paused and continued, so, comparing these 3 methods to obtain the primordial divine right, the first method is undoubtedly the best and the most powerful, but it is also the most difficult. The second method has a relatively low probability. If you have awakening and perseverance, you can also try it, but it is impossible for you to succeed. You can only pin your hopes on the next generation after you become a god. The third method is a choice made when there is no other way. If Mr. Miro can get the primordial divine right, then he does not need to find other ways to become a god, right? Why would he take a shortcut? Or should I say, take a path that may not be successful? Because he has the qualifications. Aries looked disdainfully at Milo Tanzik Williams. Fusing the primordial theocracy with one's own understanding and turning it into a true theocracy, I dare not say that everyone here can do it. At the very least, you are the top existences in your respective fields, but he. Putting aside the divine power he stole from me, he is just an ordinary person. What are the chances of an ordinary person completing this fusion process? You only see the Olympian gods, but you do not know that there are actually more geniuses. They failed because they could not integrate their understanding with the primordial divine right. It does not mean that they have succeeded just because they have the primordial divine right. So, he must find another way to become a god. If he follows the first method, he will definitely not become a god. Milo Tanzik Williams's face was red, even though he wanted to retort. He really wanted to retort, but what Aries said was the truth. He could not refute it. Chen Zhao suspected that the golden apple in the supernatural organization had been exposed. He did not expect the golden apple to be a primordial divine right. Not only had he seen the golden apple, but he had also seen the golden apple tree. Moreover, he had destroyed the golden apple tree with his own hands. It had been destroyed along with a corner of Mount Olympus. Only the golden apple was left. Thinking of this, Chen Zhao suddenly felt a little depressed. The golden apple was indeed precious. But the golden apple tree was truly priceless. What a pity, Mary, the 23rd blood, looked at Chen Zhao meaningfully. Without a doubt, she knew that Chen Zhao had the golden apple. After all, she had provided the information about the golden apple. She also knew that Chen Zhao had fought with Hercules because of this. Our targets are 4 collectors. They all have some collections from the ancient Greek era. 4 of the collections might be related to the Olympian myths, so we're here to try our luck, Milo Tanzik Williams said. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes. Try our luck. You brought the entire English gang and caused such a huge commotion in LA. You're telling me we're here to try our luck? Chen Zhao did not believe Miro Williams' words. If he did not have accurate information, he would not have made such a big move. At least, that was what Chen Zhao thought. It's because Bader told me that there's a high chance this time. He felt many strong energy waves in LA. It's probably caused by the divine artifact. He also said that there might be strong people in LA, so he told me to go all out. That's why I brought all my people. Milo Tanzik Williams used Balder as an excuse. This also meant that Chen Zhao could not confirm with Bader. Chen Zhao looked at Aries. Do you think he's trustworthy? Aries looked up at Chen Zhao silently. I also felt the divine power waves in this area, but I'm not sure what caused it. As for whether what I felt is related to what he's talking about, I don't know. As for whether he's telling the truth or not, I can only say that he's hiding something. Chapter 2860. Zhang Tianyi and Bifla clearly had more questions for Aries and Milo Tanzik Williams. When Chen Zhao left the base, 23rd Blood Mary followed him. Chen, I want the golden apple. Chen Zhao had already expected the 23rd Blood Mary's needs. It's with me, but it doesn't belong to me, Chen Zhao said calmly. Plus, you can't pay. In the past, he didn't know the value of the golden apple, so it was just a decoration. He would put it in an obvious spot in the headquarters or grab it to play with when a child came. But now that he knew its use, it was different. That would be different. No one would object to saying that this thing was a priceless treasure. It was a core material for creating a god. In addition, this thing belonged to DDRA and the others. Chen Zhao wouldn't betray his adopted daughter and subordinates for a golden apple. So, he didn't have the right to decide. Although 23rd Blood Mary had gotten the primordial stone from Chen Zhao, her death was approaching. She didn't have much lifespan left. She had to think about this problem almost every day. It wasn't unreasonable to say that the older one was, the more afraid they were of death. 23rd Blood Mary was very afraid of death now. This was human nature. No one wanted to die. Even Chen Zhao was afraid of death. But at 23rd Blood Mary's age, she was facing death for real. This was an unavoidable problem. She had to face this problem wholeheartedly. Extending her lifespan was an eternal topic for her. But most methods in the world couldn't achieve this condition. The 23rd Blood Mary had also used some unknown evil methods. However, the effects of these evil methods weren't ideal. Some of them even had serious side effects. So, unless it was absolutely necessary, 23rd Blood Mary wouldn't be willing to try it again. There was another method, changing her life form. This was also unacceptable to the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Although she was doing anything to extend her lifespan, it wasn't like she didn't have a bottom line. However, this unscrupulous method was not completely without a bottom line. Also, there were strict conditions to transform into other forms. Take the simplest corpse poison, for example. A normal person would be poisoned if they touched it. A sniff could turn them into a zombie. But for the 23rd Blood Mary, if she wanted to turn into a zombie, she would have to drink tons of ptomaine. To collect a few tons of corpse poison, it would require hundreds of thousands of people to cultivate. Even if the 23rd generation Blood Mary was crazy, she wouldn't do something like this. The 23rd generation Blood Mary had also thought of other messy methods. For example, turning into a blood clan member or an undead spirit body. They seemed to be existences that could live to the end of time. In reality, it wasn't that simple. Moreover, this kind of transformation would cause her to fall from the top of the spiritual world to the bottom. In the end, the 23rd Blood Mary set her sights on the immortals of the East and the gods of the West. How do you know I can't afford it? Although the 23rd Blood Mary was begging Chen Zhao, she still looked proud when she mentioned the price. Do you? Alright, let's hear it. What price can you offer? As long as you agree to the deal, then I can tell you my price. Chen Zhao was surprised. The 23rd Blood Mary wasn't even willing to tell him the price. Could it be that the price she offered was really so high? So high that even he had to be on guard. She should know that I wouldn't go so far as to rob her, right? If you don't tell me what price you're offering, how am I supposed to trade with you? The 23rd Blood Mary hesitated for a moment. Let me think about it. Chen Zhao pouted. He felt that the 23rd Blood Mary was insincere. Was it so hard to get her to name her price? Wouldn't it be harder for her to take it out? It was already morning when he returned home. Then he sent Fei Lai and the kids to work and school. Chen Zhao continued packing, preparing to move to Mingyue Villa. Actually, there weren't many things that needed to be moved. After a few days of continuous moving now, he was only left with his daily clothes. In the next few days, Los Angeles gradually settled down. Tim and Bodhi had now completely controlled the underground world of Los Angeles. This didn't match Chen Zhao's initial plan. However, this was the best choice at the moment. It was good to have a city without gangs. But this was also related to the political environment. If the government was really willing to crack down, Chen Zhao didn't need to do anything. He could make the gang disappear completely in a year or two. If the government didn't do anything, even if Chen Zhao killed until rivers of blood flowed, the gangs would still rise again. Of course, Los Angeles's law and order had improved a lot. At least that's what David reported back to him, the Los Angeles Police Department. In the past half-month, the crime rate in Los Angeles had decreased by at least 80%. After taking care of some chores, Steven asked Chen Zhao out for morning tea. Steven had been preparing a new movie recently. Drow Grove also came with him. Because of Lit Grove, Drow Grove had been confirmed as the male lead of Steven's new movie. Drow Grove, whose career had been on the decline, became famous again. Chen, it's so hard to make an appointment with you. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes at Steven. You're the one who's hard to make an appointment with. I've been rejected more times than you. Mr. Chen, what have you been busy with recently? Drow Grove was still a bit unfamiliar with Chen Zhao. The way he addressed Chen Zhao was standard, but it also revealed the distance between them. Actually, when Drow Grove was at home, he often asked his son about Chen Zhao's movements. However, Lit Grove himself was busy outside most of the time. Apart from his studies, it was the supernatural organization's business. Now, Lit Grove was an official member of the supernatural organization. His strength had also increased by leaps and bounds. He was also a leader when he went out on missions. Thus, he didn't have many interactions with his father. This time, Steven and Chen Zhao were having morning tea together so that they could get to know each other. No matter what, Chen Zhao had helped him a lot. Because of the failure of his previous movie investment, the box office wasn't very good. The bank was already urging him to repay. Now that Steven was the male lead of the movie, the bank immediately relaxed the repayment period. This wasn't the main thing. His other aspects had been strengthened because of this too. His career was revived, and his other aspects improved too. So, he naturally had to thank Chen Zhao. If possible, he wanted to build a more stable relationship with Chen Zhao, not just because his son was Chen Zhao's student. Chapter 2861. The three talked about a wide range of topics and were knowledgeable. Therefore, they were able to talk about any topic. Plus, it was a private gathering, so they had no inhibitions. Women, culture, money, or even travel. Mr. Chen, do you know anything about theology? Drow Grove asked. Chen Zhao and Steven were both stunned. Did he understand something? Steven knew that Chen Zhao had some sort of supernatural power. He and Chen Zhao had the same idea. Mr. Drow, why do you ask? I realize that Reet seems to be fascinated by theology these days. I saw that all the books he was looking for were of this type. Furthermore, he likes to go to places with mysterious incidents. Last time, he even went to the Savode's snowy mountain to search for an inn buried in the snow. Chen Zhao remembered Lit Grove's mission, the disappearing Snow Mountain Hotel. Lit Grove had been on that mission for quite some time. He didn't expect Drow Grove to notice. I see, Chen Zhao said righteously. I didn't notice before. I'll talk to Lit and get him to focus on studying at his age. You don't have to force him too much, but I don't want him to go out for 10 days without a sound. I almost called the police. When the child grows up, don't ever think about controlling him, Steven said emotionally. Drow Grove nodded in agreement. Fortunately, my children are still young. The oldest is only 12 years old this year. No, he should be 13 years old now. Didala was the oldest of his children. But Chen Zhao wasn't worried about her. She was at a rebellious age. But because of the upheaval in her family, she was more mature. Chen Zhao wouldn't interfere or restrict her too much. Diddla probably wouldn't have a rebellious phase. Or rather, she would have a rebellious phase, just not as obvious. Or rather, she also had a rebellious phase, but it was not as obvious. Actually, in reality, the so-called rebellious phase was just reverse psychology. It was related to parents' interference and desire for control. In reality, the so-called rebellious phase was just reverse psychology. It was related to parents' interference and desire for control. Then it was self-awareness and independence. Then came the second kind of judgment and decision regarding the requests and orders of parents and elders. The stronger their parents' control over them, the stronger their rebellious mentality would be. Chen Zhao wasn't a psychology major. However, Chen Zhao had seen some content about educating teenagers. In fact, what some education experts said was very reasonable. When the child grows up, if you still want to keep him on a leash, the child will naturally rebel. However, most of the time, such words were not applicable. Because the parents didn't know what would happen if they let go of the leash. Perhaps parents were not necessarily the most correct, but at least they used the correct experience as a reference. From their respective perspectives, both the parents and the child were correct. Stephen, when will you and Mr. Zoll start shooting the movie? Currently, the crew is in the final stages of preparation, and filming will probably start next month. Stephen said, there's still 10% of the budget that hasn't been invested yet. Are you interested? Can I get my money back? Chen Zhao asked a practical question. If this was Stephen's personal project or Rasfa's PLM Group's project, Chen Zhao wouldn't be worried at all. But the source of funding for this project had nothing to do with them. Stephen was only the director and producer. The release and promotion of the movie actually didn't have much to do with him. Stephen had absolute say in the production of the movie. But in reality, he didn't have any say in the box office. To put it bluntly, he was just a worker. For example, the company that invested this time was DSN. They had their own finance and accounting system. Moreover, they had their own rules for sharing the box office. Investors didn't get 10% of the box office just because they invested 10%. Actually, it was hard for outsiders to understand Hollywood's profit-sharing system. Hollywood's finance and accounting system could totally make a blockbuster movie lose money on the books. And the outside investors couldn't do anything about it. I can guarantee that this investment will be counted as my investment on the books. No one or company will dare to erase my share of the box office. Stephen had the right and confidence to do so. In Hollywood and even the global entertainment industry, the Big Six were undoubtedly 6 super empires. But the one with the most power wasn't the CEO or director of the 6 empires, but Stephen. He was the uncrowned king of Hollywood, the king of directors. Personally, he might not be able to compete with these Hollywood giants. But his influence was enough to bankrupt the reputation of these giants. In this business-oriented era, losing credibility was a very scary thing. Partners, investors, and even banks would lose trust in this company. How much do you need? Chen Zhao asked. Actually, Stephen didn't lack investment in anything he shot now. All the big companies and investors waived their checks. As long as Stephen nodded, it would almost be a profitable investment. Stephen just wanted to make money with Chen Zhao. Actually, Stephen was returning the favor. Previously, Chen Zhao had given Stephen a hand when distributing the profits on Mystical Island. So, Stephen naturally wanted to return the favor. Of course, it was also in the movie field that he was most confident in. Perhaps the benefits of the two were different. A 10% investment was already the largest investment share he could get. Drow Grove was a bit envious. Even as the main actor, he didn't have the right to invest. Stephen's project was completely different from the one he'd invested in before. Back then, Drow Grove had invested in and acted as the main actor. In order to get investments, he'd almost broken his legs. He'd begged for a bank loan and used all sorts of collateral to barely get the budget. Later on, the film had to be released in a hurry due to overspending. There were many flaws that couldn't be fixed or res-hot. This caused the quality of the film to drop. In the end, it also failed miserably at the box office. On the other hand, it was Steven's project. He didn't even need to get investments. With just one shout, all the big companies and banks would suck up to him and give him checks. He really wanted to lie on Steven's bed. This was the difference. His achievements in acting were indeed higher than most actors. But as an investor and film producer, he was a Pacific Ocean away from Steven. If Steven hadn't asked him to be the main actor this time, he would probably be crushed by the huge debt. In Hollywood, there were celebrities who went bankrupt every day. Most of them were like him, attracted by the seemingly delicious projects. Then, they gambled with all their money. The consequences were obvious. Chapter 2862. In the end, Steven asked Chen Zhao for $20 million, 10% of the investment. Actually, as an investor, Chen Zhao didn't really care about this investment. He just treated it as supporting Steven's business. Just then, two dark business cars stopped by the roadside. First, a few black-clothed people got out. The black-clothed men were about to come over to them. In the end, he was stopped by Steven and Drow Grove's bodyguards. They all wore black suits, leather shoes, and black super glasses. They were all the same. Then, the two groups of black-clothed men began to communicate. They pointed at Chen Zhao and Steven. After a while, Steven's bodyguards walked over. Mr. Chen, they seem to be the bodyguards of a European duke. He's in the car and wants to talk to you. Chen Zhao knew all of Steven's bodyguards, so he spoke more casually. Chen Zhao knew who it was. It was 23rd Blood Mary. She was in the car now. Both Drow Grove and Steven were surprised. They didn't expect Chen Zhao to be related to European nobles. Chen, I have something to do in the afternoon. I'll be leaving now. Mr. Steven, I still have to discuss the script with you. Let's go together. The two of them knew what was good for them and left. Then Chen Zhao entered the business car. 23rd Blood Mary sat across from him. Chen Zhao casually sat in front of the 23rd Blood Mary. 23rd Blood Mary didn't speak. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she was thinking and contemplating, not speaking. Chen Zhao didn't speak either. He played with his phone in boredom. Just like that, more than 10 minutes passed. Chen Zhao put down his phone and looked at 23rd Blood Mary. You still haven't decided. If I didn't, I wouldn't have come. Chen Zhao understood. If 23rd Blood Mary didn't make a decision, then the two would pretend that nothing had happened. However, the more cautious Mary was, the more curious Chen Zhao was. What exactly did she have? It was hard to even speak. Even if she said she had a divine artifact. Was she afraid that Chen Zhao would snatch her divine artifact? I found something not long ago, 23rd Blood Mary said calmly. You plan to trade this for the golden apple? Yes. The 23rd generation Blood Mary nodded. I'm very curious. What exactly is it that makes you so cautious? Do you not trust me or what? Indeed, Chen Zhao liked to snatch things too. But robbing also depended on the person. Chen Zhao was sure that he couldn't snatch the 23rd Blood Mary. The 23rd generation Blood Mary's strength, identity, and social status gave her enough protection. Under any circumstances, Chen Zhao would attack 23rd Blood Mary. They all thought that Qin Zhao had to give up everything. Family, wealth, status, and reputation would all be gone. I know, but I'm worried that if this information is leaked, I'll become the target of public criticism. What is it? You can't even trust me. Qin Zhao was more curious. What was it that could make the 23rd Blood Mary so cautious? Mimir Spring. What the hell? Forgive Qin Zhao's ignorance, but he really hadn't heard of such a thing. In layman's terms, it's the Fountain of Wisdom. I've never heard of such a thing before. There are at least 800 in 1,000. Can you be more specific? Qin Zhao still didn't understand. To be honest, there were legends about the Fountain of Wisdom and Water of Wisdom all over the world. There were at least 800 divine and holy waters with the name Fountain of Wisdom. Therefore, it was hard for Qin Zhao to figure out which myth this thing was from. It's the Norse Fountain of Wisdom, the 23rd Blood Mary said. The 23rd Blood Mary said, the god King Odin exchanged an eye for it. After drinking the water from the Fountain of Wisdom, Odin predicted the twilight of the gods. According to the legends, the twilight of the gods began the moment Odin drank the Fountain of Wisdom. The main use of the Fountain of Wisdom is to let people see the future. Qin Zhao asked. No, it's to obtain infinite knowledge and the power of omniscience and omnipotence. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. You and I both know that wisdom and power can't be obtained by drinking water. At their level, they were actually equivalent to some gods in myths and legends. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were the gods of this era. Therefore, to them, many myths and legends were no longer a matter of whether they were credible or not. It was a matter of understanding and not understanding. In their eyes, knowledge and power weren't so incomprehensible anymore. I know, but the Fountain of Wisdom is different. How is it different? The Fountain of Wisdom is produced by the World Tree. It contains the truth of the world. Just like how the golden apple is born from the world and contains the power of laws, the Fountain of Wisdom is the same. It's just that the way they're produced is different. Have you drunk it before? How do you know it really has such an effect? Besides, how do you know that you've obtained the real Fountain of Wisdom? I can tell if it's real or not, Blood Mary said calmly. The 23rd Blood Mary said indifferently, because the one guarding the Fountain of Wisdom was Demon Wolf Fenrir. I obtained the Fountain of Wisdom by killing Fenrir. Qin Zhao inhaled sharply. Fenrir was the most famous wolf. The one that killed Odin in one bite was said to be able to devour the world. He was killed by Blood Mary of the 23rd generation. Indeed, the strength of this group of old fellows was not to be underestimated. No matter how much of the legend was true, anyone who could defeat and kill the demon wolf Fenrir was definitely a top figure. Furthermore, even when I'm just holding the bottle of the Spring of Wisdom, I can feel knowledge constantly flowing into my mind. It's the truth that comes from all things in the world. I can't imagine what it would be like if I were to drink it directly. Then why don't you drink it directly? I don't dare to drink it. Blood Mary actually chickened out. She actually chickened out. She even dared to use arsenic as seasoning. She actually didn't dare to drink the legendary Fountain of Wisdom. Why? Is it poisonous? Odin is the king of gods in Norse mythology. He has to pay the price of an eye. I don't know what price I have to pay. No, Odin was bitten to death by Fenrir. If you can defeat Fenrir, it means that you're stronger than Odin. There's no need to be scared. Chapter 2863. From Ares, I found out the origin of the golden apple. It's the core item for becoming a god. Everyone was shocked. Although they had also imagined the use of the golden apple, they'd imagined the use of the golden apple, but they didn't expect it to be the key to becoming a god. Uncle, do you want to use the golden apple to become a god? Xanli didn't object to Qin Zhao using the golden apple. The others were conflicted and hesitant. Not everyone was willing to give the golden apple to Qin Zhao for free. Even if they'd gotten the golden apple because of Qin Zhao. But after understanding the value of the golden apple, they couldn't help but want it. Of course, you can't become a god with the golden apple. It's quite difficult. At least, I'm not confident. You guys. It'll probably be even more difficult. But someone wants to exchange your golden apple with something of equal value. I called you here to ask if you're willing to exchange. Something of equal value. That was the golden apple. The key item to becoming a god. Was there anything else in the world that could be of equal value to the golden apple? Uncle, what is it? Water of wisdom. It's what Odin drank in Norse mythology, Qin Zhao answered. Everyone looked at each other. Most of them were hesitant. They didn't deny the value of the water of wisdom. They accepted that it was of equal value to the golden apple. Of course, both of these divine items had immeasurable value. Therefore, it was impossible to really divide the price into US dollars. Therefore, the value was roughly the same, which was acceptable to them. Ruan Faxben was the most excited. After all, he'd already studied the golden apple. But he didn't get anything. He'd extracted a small amount of skin from the golden apple's surface, but it turned into gold immediately. So he had no progress on the golden apple. This also meant that the golden apple couldn't be divided into 5 parts. Once it was divided into 5, the other 4 parts would definitely become normal gold. Only the largest part would inherit all the golden apple's characteristics. This made Ruan Faxben's research difficult. But if it was the water of wisdom, it would be much simpler. Plus, Ruan Faxben was very interested in studying the water of wisdom. So, he agreed with the deal wholeheartedly. Xanli was completely on Qin Zhao's side. Uncle, why don't you use the golden apple to become a god yourself? As I said, it's very difficult. If I were to use it, I'm not sure if I can succeed. Besides, the golden apple doesn't belong to me, it belongs to you. Qin Zhao looked at Colin, Moore, and Lisa. You guys, tell me your opinions too. What opinion could they possibly have? Back then, regarding the distribution of the golden apples. Everyone had already agreed that if one of them wanted to obtain the complete golden apple, they would have to pay the price. In that case, he would have to find 4 items equal to 1/5 of the value of the golden apple. This was the only way to obtain the rights to the golden apple. But what did the golden apple mean? In the past, it was already a peerless treasure. Now, after knowing the true use of the golden apple, Lin Fan was stunned. With their abilities, it was even more impossible for them to find treasures of equal value. So far, they hadn't found any of them. Or rather, he didn't even bother to look for her. Even if it was only 1/5 of the golden apple, it was still a rare treasure. How could he find it so easily? Out of the 5 of them, Xanli had the highest chance of winning. After all, Xanli was Qin Zhao's adopted daughter. With Qin Zhao's help, it wasn't impossible for Xanli to find treasures equal to 1/5 of the value of the golden apples. President, you decide. Colin's answer was actually very negative. One reason was because of Qin Zhao's power and identity. The other reason was that he didn't feel like he had much say. He felt that the others would definitely listen to Qin Zhao. Thus, his answer wasn't important. Of course, there was another important point. He felt that this trade was definitely very important. With his status and power, he almost didn't have a chance to interrupt. And Qin Zhao was undoubtedly the person with the most power to make the decision. Moreover, he didn't mind letting Qin Zhao make the decision. No matter how he looked at it, Chen Zhao was the best candidate. President, I'll listen to you too. Me too. President, can you tell us who we're dealing with? The leader of the Scarlet Church, 23rd Blood Mary, the initiator of the Scarlet Mission, Chen Zhao said. She's on the same level as me. Chen Zhao had once felt that 23rd Blood Mary might be the weakest among them. Even the newly promoted Bifla might be much stronger than 23rd Blood Mary. Not long ago, 23rd Blood Mary had personally told him that she had killed Fenrir, the world-destroying demon wolf in Norse mythology. It was a peerless beast that had bitten Odin to death with one bite. Of course, Chen Zhao hadn't seen the battle. But no matter what, Chen Zhao wouldn't have that kind of thought again. 23rd Blood Mary, Bifla, and Zhang Tianyi. They were existences that stood at the peak of the spiritual world. None of them were kind. Among them, only Ruan Faxiben had seen 23rd Blood Mary before. However, there was practically no one in the spirit world who didn't know of the 23rd generation Blood Mary. So, there was no need to tell them about 23rd Blood Mary's identity and power. They already knew about the 23rd generation Blood Mary. In the end, everyone agreed to the trade. Of course, not everyone was willing to do so. But at least they didn't reject it. Chen Zhao's attitude was also very clear. Actually, he'd already agreed to the trade when he discussed with the five. If he didn't agree, he wouldn't ask them. Of course, Chen Zhao had to be the one in charge of the trade. If it was someone else, they would probably be swallowed by 23rd Blood Mary until not even their bones were left. The so-called trade had to be of equal status and power. Lions wouldn't trade with sheep. After the conversation with the five, Chen Zhao contacted the 23rd generation's Blood Mary. Chen Zhao returned to the headquarters and took the golden apple. He had to admit that the supernatural organization really didn't pay enough attention to the golden apple. When Chen Zhao arrived at the headquarters, the golden apple was placed on the guest table in the hall as a decoration. If Milo Tanzik Williams knew about the golden apple, he could just come to the supernatural organization while Chen Zhao wasn't here. He probably wouldn't even need to fight to get everything he wanted. Fortunately, although the golden apple wasn't valued, no one knew that it was in the supernatural organization. Or rather, the people in the organization were too lazy to tell others about the golden apple. Chapter 2864. 23rd generation Mary and Chen Zhao met. This time, they chose a remote location for the transaction. There wasn't a third person present. 23rd generation Mary took out a transparent bottle. Colorful lights flashed in the bottle. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. This thing looked familiar. The bottle of Satan's blood that the handsome boy had given him was like this. Satan's blood was actually a drop of the handsome boy's blood. However, the color was more vibrant and the light was more intoxicating. If one looked at it for a long time, they would feel like they couldn't control themselves. Where's the thing I want? 23rd generation Mary looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao took out the golden apple. Here. Can we do the transaction now? Chen Zhao shook his head. 23rd generation Mary frowned slightly. Displeasure appeared on her old face. What? Do you want to inspect it? No, I believe it's real, but I feel like I'm losing out. What do you mean? Cancel the transaction. I just want you to make up for the difference. Chen Zhao chuckled at 23rd generation Mary. The so-called transaction was, of course, an equivalent exchange. But it wasn't just about the value of the item itself. It was also about the two's needs. To 23rd generation Mary, the golden apple was a very urgent necessity. It was a very urgent necessity. But the water of wisdom was different. To Chen Zhao, Xin Li, and the other four, it wasn't a necessity. 23rd generation Mary quickly understood the crux of the matter. What do you want? Fenrir, Chen Zhao said. The most ferocious magical beast in history. It shouldn't be cheap. 23rd generation Mary took a deep breath. She closed her eyes and thought for a few minutes. Chen Zhao didn't rush her. He stood there and waited for 23rd generation Mary's reply. Half. I can only give you half at most. Plus, I've already sliced Fenrir. I can't give you the whole thing. You're not planning to give me the bits and pieces, right? Take away the most valuable parts. I won't take the leftovers. I said half means half. I can't give you half of the magic core. That's the core and the most valuable. If I cut it in half, it'll be destroyed. You also said that monster cores are the most valuable. If you don't give me half of them, then this deal won't make sense. I didn't say that I won't give it to you. I'll find something of equal value to exchange with you. That's the monster core of a peerless beast. Where are you going to find another one? I didn't say I'd give you another monster core of a peerless beast. My Scarlet Church has existed for 1,000 years and has countless treasures. It's not impossible to find a treasure of equivalent value. Hearing Mary's words, Chen Zhao was speechless. Why does it sound as simple as looking for a few dollars in a drawer? His supernatural organization had accumulated quite a bit over the past 2 years. But the most precious thing seemed to be Hobart Timur Haber's corpse. This thing could be said to be precious, but it really couldn't compare to Fenrir's corpse. At least, in terms of level, Fenrir was definitely higher than Hobart Timur Haber. Judging from what the 23rd Blood Mary said, she seemed to have a whole drawer of these things. What should I do? I suddenly want to rob the Scarlet Church. The 23rd Blood Mary seemed to feel Chen Zhao's unfriendly gaze. She immediately glared at him. Are you thinking of robbing the Scarlet Church? Ha. Of course not. Chen Zhao's thoughts were seen through. He smiled awkwardly. Let's go. Bring it back later. There were some things that everyone knew. It was just a thought for a moment. But he definitely couldn't hide it from the 23rd Blood Mary. She would probably increase her vigilance when she returned. It couldn't be helped. Being targeted by someone like Chen Zhao was a very dangerous thing. When he got home, Chen Zhao took out the bottle of Satan's blood that the handsome guy had given him and compared it with the water of wisdom. They both had a similar feeling, but the water of wisdom was clearly much thinner. It felt like it had been diluted. The 23rd Blood Mary had said that the water of wisdom was born from the World Tree. Was the handsome guy's original body the World Tree? Definitely not. That guy's original body was an angel. But since he was that powerful, it was understandable that he had some kind of magical powers. According to Chen Zhao's speculation, the small world would eventually evolve into a small world. The small world would then give birth to the World Tree. Thinking about it this way, it seemed reasonable that the handsome guy's blood had turned into the water of wisdom. The speculation process was rather rough, but Chen Zhao felt that his guess was probably correct. At least the general direction was correct. As for the details, he was still studying it. The main use of Satan's blood was for the advancement of a great lord who had become a secondary demon king. In the infernal realm, the number of secondary demon kings was not too many, not too few. Chen Zhao wasn't a demon from hell, so the handsome guy had given him this. As for how to use it, Chen Zhao didn't know. The handsome guy hadn't told him either. He only said that he should slowly comprehend and absorb it. But if he absorbed the power of Satan's blood through the bottle, it would probably take him a few hundred years to completely absorb it. Chen Zhao guessed that he would have to drink it. However, the handsome guy had said that anyone below the secondary Demon King level would explode when they touched Satan's blood. So Qin Zhao was curious how a great lord could drink this and become a secondary Demon King without dying. As for the water of wisdom, Qin Zhao planned to return it to Axianli, Moor, Ruan Faxaban, Risa, and Colin. It was originally exchanged for the golden apple that belonged to them. So the water of wisdom naturally belonged to them too. But they couldn't drink it directly. Even after diluting it, they still couldn't handle it. Qin Zhao could feel the terrifying power contained in the bottle. Probably only people at Qin Zhao's level or Gen 23's level could handle it. Moreover, Qin Zhao felt that he might have to pay a price for it too. After all, according to Blood Mary 23, Odin in Norse mythology had sacrificed an eye to drink the water of wisdom. She had also sensed the risk of drinking it. This meant that the water of wisdom wasn't as good as imagined. Unfortunately, there was no instruction manual. But Qin Zhao could ask the handsome guy. No one should know the correct way to use it better than him. But even if he didn't drink it, he would still feel some enlightenment just by touching it through the bottle. Qin Zhao didn't feel it strongly, because he was already used to the purer Satan's blood. When Qin Zhao had first touched Satan's blood, he also felt some incredible enlightenment. But it was like a drug resistance. After using it a few times, the feeling would fade. Chapter 2865. Master, there's a visitor, the butler said in an electronic voice. Confused, Qin Zhao said, show me the video. The surveillance footage was brought up. It was an unfamiliar man. He wore a gray suit and glasses. His hair was combed until it was shiny and shiny. He had a briefcase in his hand. Qin Zhao was sure that he didn't know this man. Who is it? Qin Zhao asked. The man looked at the camera and said, hello, I'm Ningtai Johnson from Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company. Qin Zhao thought for a moment and decided to let the man in. Ningtai Johnson looked more like a salesman. His words and actions were methodical and carried a strong professional habit. It wasn't that he was impolite. He was just too well behaved. Seeing Qin Zhao at the door, he immediately greeted him with a smile and shook his hand. Hello, I'm Ningtai Johnson, the investment manager of Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company. This is my name card. Qin Zhao glanced at the card and put it away. He would probably throw the card away later. Hello, what can I do for you? Our company has 30 years of history. We've developed many popular medicines in the market. We've done research on epilepsy and Alzheimer's disease. Currently, we're working on these two diseases. Our research on epilepsy has reached a critical stage. However, due to lack of funding, there hasn't been any progress. Mr. Chen, are you interested in investing in us? Do you have any information? Qin Zhao was a doctor, so he wasn't unfamiliar with epilepsy. Epilepsy was a neurological disease. It wasn't an incurable disease. Current medical technology had a chance of curing it. There were also some special drugs that could control the disease. Therefore, if the other party was researching special drugs for epilepsy, it would be difficult to compete with the special drugs that were currently dominating the market unless it had a very good effect in a short period of time. Therefore, Qin Zhao wasn't too optimistic about this. Of course, if the other party could provide information that could make Qin Zhao's eyes light up. Qin Zhao didn't mind investing some money. Sorry, I'm only the investment manager. Our research is in a confidential stage, so I can't take it out casually. Then where's your company? Where's the production line? Where's the research lab? You should have the company's main information, right? Qin Zhao hadn't heard of Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company, so he was still cautious. Of course, there were at least 800 pharmaceutical companies in the world. So, Chen Zhao wasn't sure who this person was. Ningtai Johnson's mannerisms were also very normal. Chen Zhao didn't notice anything strange. Of course, there was nothing strange. However, the other party had yet to produce any information. So, he wanted to take millions of dollars from Chen Zhao with just a few words. It must be a little whimsical. Chen Zhao wasn't interested in knowing more about the company. He wasn't interested in knowing how many people the company had cheated. Anyway, it was fine as long as his money wasn't cheated. Ningtai Johnson returned to the hotel and tossed his briefcase aside casually. He slumped into the chair, his expression changing continuously. He'd failed again today to find an investment. Of course, this wasn't his first failure. Before this, Ningtai Johnson had already found a dozen rich people. But all of them gave the same answer. No money, fuck off. The only difference was that some people were more subtle. For example, the Chinese man today. Just then, Ningtai Johnson's phone rang. Ningtai, how's it going? Did you get the investment? No, no one's an idiot, Ningtai Johnson complained. I don't have any valuable information. Why should they invest? Looks like normal plans won't work. I need to use some unconventional methods to accumulate research funds. Chapter 2866. Hearing his words, Ningtai Johnson knew it wasn't good. What do you want to do? Don't mess around. This is a society ruled by law. Do you still think you're living in the dark ages of the Middle Ages? This era is no different from the Middle Ages. People with power can still do whatever they want, right? No, you're wrong. In the past, ordinary people couldn't hurt us, but now, a missile can turn us into dust. That's why I need to continue my research from 800 years ago. As long as it succeeds, even missiles can't kill us. This is how we ensure our safety. But if you cause a commotion, we might be destroyed by the government before our research succeeds. No, as long as we're careful, it'll be fine, replied. We can just pretend to be ordinary people. Fine. Tell me, what do you want to do? Kidnap those tycoons. Don't be silly. The risk of kidnapping tycoons is too high. Retorted. Plus, they have too much influence. The government will retaliate. Hearing Herm's words, Ningtai Johnson finally sighed in relief. He really thought Herm wanted to kidnap the tycoons. They were already part of the modern society. Therefore, they understood the rules of this era. Don't go against the government no matter what. Don't go against the rich no matter what. This was the rule of this era. Then what do you suggest we do? Rob a bank, of course. 3 minutes of silence, then Ningtai Johnson spat out a mouthful of blood. He really thought Herm had turned over a new leaf. He wanted to give Herm a thumbs up. In the end, his thoughts were even more ridiculous. Rob a bank. Ningtai Johnson thought Herm's central nervous system must have been corroded by the Azure Demon potion he created. What was the concept of robbing a bank? In the movies, there would always be a group of vicious or intelligent people who fooled the police and the bank's security system. They would then casually leave with a huge sum of money. In the movies, it was really cool. In reality, it was much more troublesome than in the movies. Not to mention the small banks in the remote areas. Those small banks were destined to not have much money. For people like them, it wasn't too difficult. But how much money could they rob from those small banks? 100,000 USD was already the limit. But $100,000 was enough to buy a culture tank. So robbing a small bank was pointless. Based on their need for funds, they could only rob the headquarters of the banks located in the city center or the branches of the mega bank groups, the kind that handled tens of millions of USD every day, or the banks that acted as the cash reserve of the regional banks. Only this kind of bank could meet their needs. However, the difficulty of robbing such a bank was basically the same as attacking a military base. He didn't think that with their strength, they could easily rob this kind of bank's money. Most importantly, once their abilities were exposed. In that case, it wouldn't attract ordinary people. There was a high chance that people from the spirit world would intervene. At that time, they would be in even more trouble. You're crazy. No, I have a plan. In fact, I've been planning since you failed to find the funding. Herm explained in a serious tone, the labyrinth seeds we've cultivated are close to success. It won't be long before we can mass cultivate them. We can use them to carry out our robbery plan. Lost Path Seed. You should know the weakness of the Lost Path Seed. We haven't solved the problem of the labyrinth seed yet. Ningtai Johnson said in dissatisfaction. So, forcefully using the labyrinth seed is also very risky. But if we can't find the funding, our research will have to stop. We don't have much time left. If we can't make a breakthrough, we can only become a pile of dirt. Ningtai Johnson fell silent. Of course, he understood Herm's words. He also wanted the research to continue. He also wanted to make a breakthrough. However, he and Herm were different. After they woke up, they understood the rules of this era and discussed the division of labor. Herm continued his experiments, while Ningtai Johnson walked outside and was in charge of providing Herm with funding. Ningtai Johnson had been outside for a long time. He understood the rules of the outside world better than Herm. Therefore, he understood their position and strength better. This era was the era of ordinary people. Although there were spiritualists, it was still a world dominated by ordinary people. Spiritualists could use their own abilities to occupy a place. However, if they crossed the line, not to mention the ordinary people, the government wouldn't let them go. Even spiritualists wouldn't let them go. Herm, the nerdy otaku, was different. Although he had some understanding of the outside world, his way of thinking was still in the Middle Ages. He still felt that as long as he was strong enough, he could do whatever he wanted. Just like 800 years ago. But in reality, 800 years ago, they still couldn't do whatever they wanted. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been forced into hibernation and only woke up after 800 years. Hibernation didn't mean they wouldn't lose their life force. In fact, their current appearance didn't match their real age. Even their bodies were like rotten wood, about to rot in age. This was why they immersed themselves in research after they woke up. For the sake of true immortality, they had been engaged in this research since 800 years ago. They had also achieved some results from their research. These results gave them 300 years of life. However, these 300 years of life didn't bring them joy. The effects of their research also followed. Countless spiritualists formed an alliance and declared war on them. They had no choice but to hibernate to avoid the encirclement of the spiritual world. Although hibernation could slow down the loss of their life force, it didn't mean it wouldn't. Moreover, the duration of hibernation was longer than they had planned. 800 years of hibernation offset 300 years of life force. 800 years of hibernation caused the first stage of their research to go to waste. It was because they were afraid of death that they started their research on immortality. But now, reality forced them into a corner. If they didn't research, they would die. According to their estimations, they only had around 10 years of life left. In this era, research required money. It wasn't like the past where they just robbed. However, in the end, they were only doing biological research, not finance. Therefore, money was the biggest stumbling block on their research path. Chapter 2867. Chen Zhao, what have you and 23rd been doing these days? She's always sneaky. She didn't even come these days. Zhang Tianyi was sure that there was some secret between Chen Zhao and 23rd Blood Mary. After all, 23rd Blood Mary had always been the most passionate about studying Aries. However, in the past 2 days, she didn't come to talk to Aries at all. She locked herself in the hotel and even refused their visits. They would never believe that there was nothing going on between her and Chen Zhao. 23rd Blood Mary couldn't tell them anything. Zhang Tianyi naturally asked Chen Zhao. Zhang Tianyi remembered that Chen Zhao and 23rd Blood Mary had talked privately that day. He didn't know what they talked about. However, it was definitely because of that conversation. Why do you ask? It has nothing to do with you anyway. How can it have nothing to do with you? I'm just worried that 23rd Blood Mary will trick you. I'm just worried about you. Huh, believe me. 23rd Blood Mary is cruel and cunning. I'm really worried that you'll be taken advantage of by her. With that, even Zhang Tianyi started to doubt himself. If you really want to know, ask 23rd Blood Mary. If she's willing to tell you, I won't object. If she doesn't, I can't help you even if I want to. Zhang Tianyi immediately caught the meaning in Chen Zhao's words. Chen Zhao should be the seller and 23rd Blood Mary was undoubtedly the buyer. What Chen Zhao sold to 23rd Blood Mary must be very precious. So precious that he had to be wary of them. What did you trade? Primordial stone. No, you don't have primordial stone anymore. Is it some other treasure that can extend life? Zhang Tianyi couldn't be blamed for being so sensitive. He also wanted to extend his life. Although he wasn't as desperate as 23rd Blood Mary. But he wasn't young anymore. If he had the chance, of course he wanted to extend his life. Only longevity could make 23rd Blood Mary let go of such an important thing. It's not longevity. 23rd Blood Mary didn't come for another reason. If you really want to ask her, wait until she's done. You really can't say. What did you sell to 23rd Blood Mary? I want some too. It's gone. There's only one of it left. You won't be able to find a second one in the world. Even if you can find a second one, you won't be able to afford it. Zhang Tianyi was immediately displeased. Are you looking down on me or Mount Longhu? You can think whatever you want. There's only one item anyway. Even if you want to buy it, you won't be able to. You really can't reveal anything. Go ask the 23rd generation. I should protect the privacy of the consumers. Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. Forget it, I'll go find her. He ended the call with Zhang Tianyi. The Mingyue villa was almost ready. In the next 2 days, their family would move to the Bright Moon Villa. Portia, where are we going? Navika Lena asked. She had never been to Mingyue Villa. She had been running around for the past 2 days, helping Chen Zhao with an errand. He was Chen Zhao's assistant, amateur accountant, and non-professional legal consultant. Navika Lena was much more useful than Portia. Of course, Portia was also highly educated. However, her high degree of education was incompatible with her current job. Most of her job overlapped with that of a nanny. The most challenging job was to take care of the children. Navika Lena was different. She was a professional in both accounting and law. Boss is other manner. Boss has other manners. Of course. Is that strange? Navika Lena finally saw Mingyue Villa. It was completely different from the tranquility and leisure of Mirror Lake Manor. Mingyue Villa was located on the coastline, which meant that it was noisy. It was a completely different style. Mingyue Villa was more majestic. Portia pushed her suitcase and glanced at the dragon head in the yard. Boss, the craftsmanship is so bad. The outer shell is falling. Chen Zhao was speechless. I'll take care of it later. The dragon head had been there for a few months. Chen Zhao had forgotten that the dragon head would rot. Of course, the dragon rotted very slowly. That was why there weren't any disgusting scenes. Plus, there were ventilation all around. The sea breeze blew over and took away all the smell. Fortunately, Portia and Navika Lina didn't get suspicious. Portia only thought that it was a poor craftsmanship. Back then, Chen Zhao had spent a lot of money to hire a Hollywood prop artist to do the script. But how should he deal with it? Throw it away. It was a dragon head, after all. It was valuable, even though the preservation wasn't done well. However, even the dragon bones and dragon horns were still very valuable. But put it away. Where should he put it? The warehouse in the supernatural organization's headquarters was almost filled with all kinds of dragons. More than once, Chen Zhao had complained to West. Could he stop hunting dragons? If he continued, the dragons would become protected animals. But the warehouse couldn't fit that many. Who in the supernatural organization didn't want to use 1 or 2 dragon parts as decorations? Now, the bodies of these dragons were in an awkward position. It was tasteless, but it was a pity to throw it away. No matter how precious something was, its value would be greatly reduced if it was overused. Should he give it away? Chen Zhao thought for a while and decided to give the dragon head away. Hey, Gavich. Mr. Chen, what's up? I have a dragon head that's almost rotting. Do you want it? Chen Zhao felt embarrassed. He felt like he was throwing trash away. He couldn't bear to throw it away, but he had to give it away like it was a treasure. Yes. Lila Gavik screamed at the top of his lungs. Wasn't that obvious? That was the head of a giant dragon. You couldn't even buy it on the market. Every time there was a magic item made from a dragon's body, it would be sold out as soon as it was put on the shelves. Lila Gavich knew that Chen Zhao had killed many dragons, so he could ignore the dragon's head. Even if he didn't keep it, he could kill one when he needed it. But other people didn't have Chen Zhao's power. Even though he was already an elf, he still had to tremble when facing a dragon. For example, his dark elves had to sacrifice at least half of their population to kill a dragon. But now, Chen Zhao was giving away a dragon head for free. Only an idiot would reject it. Okay, come to my Mingyue villa. I still have some people. When Lila Gavich brought people over, he realized that the so-called rotting dragon head was actually slightly rotting. The situation was much better than he had expected. Lila Gavich was even happier. This thing was worth a lot on the market, let alone for his own use. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2868. Back then, Chen Zhao's dragon head had indeed looked impressive when it was fresh. But now, it was almost done rotting. It was incompatible with the overall style of Mingyue Villa. It was only a matter of time before they got rid of it. Portia and Navika had already changed into swimsuits and went to play on the beach. Navika had never had so much fun. On this high-quality beach that stretched for several kilometers, no one would harass them. They didn't need to hide here. They could enjoy the best beach entertainment here. They could even swim to the deep water. If they were tired, they could climb onto the yacht floating in the deep water to rest. Not long after, Navika Lina suddenly screamed. Portia! Shark! Shark! Portia was lying on an inflatable cushion. She was overjoyed. Looking at Navika's terrified expression, she laughed out loud. Portia. I'm not joking. It's a real shark. Look over there, I know. Don't be so nervous. Relax. Portia waved her hand calmly and turned to look in the direction of the shark's fin. That should be the boss's. What boss? Portia, let's run. That looks like a big guy. That big guy is our colleague. More accurately, he's one of our bosses. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you crazy? They're our boss's pets. We'll need to take care of them for a long time in the future. Portia had long passed the time to be terrified. In the past, she'd been as terrified as Navika. Right now, she was calm and collected. Navika calmed down a little, but she watched as the shark's fin flew toward them. She couldn't help but shudder. Although she had seen enough terrifying animals in the Mirror Lake Manor, she had never seen anything like that before. But on the sea, she still couldn't hide her fear when facing the huge shark. Won't it attack us? Don't worry. It won't. Finally, third brother leaped up before them. Navika was frightened by the nearly 10 meters long body. Chen Zhao was in the yard on the cliff, drinking afternoon tea and watching the scenery on the sea. On the surface of the sea, Portia and Navika situation could be seen clearly. Just then, an inferior demon ran to Chen Zhao. Master, the room is ready, and the luggage is ready. Okay, go prepare dinner. Chen Zhao waved his hand. The inferior demon hesitated for a while, but it did not leave. It hesitated on the spot. What? Anything else? Master, the inferior demon suddenly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Master, I want to learn magic. Why do you study magic? Master, magic can solve many things. Cooking, housework, and guarding the manor can all be improved through magic. Last time at Mirror Lake Manor, a leopard broke into the manor. In the end, more than a dozen of our brethren couldn't kill the leopard. It was Lord Raymond who took action and killed the leopard. Lesser demons were treated as servants in the infernal realm, but no one treated them as guards. It wasn't that they couldn't learn magic, it was just that their talent was really worrying. If you want to learn, then learn. I'll go to hell next time and help you find some suitable demonic magic. Thank you, Master. The inferior demon happily went to do its work. In the evening, the whole family came back. The children started running noisily again. Compared to Mirror Lake Manor, the children preferred Mingyue Villa. There was a longer coastline for them to run on. Of course, the grassland behind Mirror Lake Manor was also fine. But the grass was clearly not as soft as the beach for the children to run on. At least, the children liked to run on the beach barefoot. To Chen Zhao, this was a moment of family joy. Although he wasn't at the age to enjoy his family. Darling, your phone is ringing. Didn't you hear it? Chen Zhao glanced at the phone not far from him. He already knew who it was. I just don't want to answer it. Chen Zhao said calmly. Why? Is it your enemy? No, it's the ruler of L.A.'s underground world. Half a month ago, he was just a lackey. In fact, Tim and Bodhi had contacted Chen Zhao many times. But Chen Zhao ignored them all. They were only looking for Chen Zhao to pay tribute to him. Although they had already ruled over all the gangs in Los Angeles, but they were clear about one thing. Whether they could keep their position as the boss. It wasn't about how powerful they were. It was about whether Chen Zhao would agree. So, after completing the integration of the gangs in L.A., the first thing they did was to contact Chen Zhao and express their sincerity. That they wouldn't do anything bad in the future. Fei Lai glanced at Chen Zhao's phone. Answer it. If you don't like them, tell them not to call you. Chen Zhao still picked up the phone and asked coldly, "What's up?" "Mr. Chen, one of my people in charge of firearms reported a deal to me today. I'm not interested in your firearms deal." "Mr. Chen, wait, don't hang up yet," Tim said hurriedly. "It's like this. If it's just a regular deal, I naturally wouldn't dare to disturb you, but it's a big deal. It's $3 million. That much?" Chen Zhao knew very well how cheap American firearms were. A semi-automatic weapon cost no more than $300. A bullet cost less than $1. $3 million was almost the annual sales of firearms to a small country or a warlord. Who bought it? I don't know. My subordinate doesn't know what's important at all. When I found out, the deal was already half done. The other party left a deposit of $200,000 and took away a large number of weapons. Don't you deal in firearms all pay in one go? Why is there a deposit? $3 million of firearms isn't something that can be prepared in a day or two. The other party needs it very urgently, so he only took away my subordinate's inventory. It's still far from the total amount he wants to buy. Then why are you looking for me? Do you want me to find the seller for you? No. I just want to tell you that if there's any large-scale conflict in recently, it wasn't done by me or my men, Tim said worriedly. And in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, there are only two places that can use so many firearms, the military base and the bank. Chapter 2869. Tim informing Chen Zhao about the firearms was actually to draw a clear line between them. It didn't matter if it was attacking a military base or robbing a bank. It had nothing to do with Chen Zhao. However, Tim knew that Chen Zhao had gotten involved in the gangs mainly because it affected his personal life. Chen Zhao didn't like the chaotic Los Angeles. This was also the reason why Tim and Body tried their best to restrict the gang's actions after they took control of the LA gangs. They didn't want them to continue disturbing the peace. With their control, the effect was very obvious. The crime rate in Los Angeles plummeted. Obviously, Tim and Bodhi were guarding their own little plot of land. They weren't good people, but they weren't robbing people on the streets either. Their buying was worse than robbing people on the streets. However, it wasn't something that ordinary people could feel. Chen Zhao didn't want all the gangs to disappear. He just needed a world of light that he couldn't see. Robbing a bank was clearly a very bad thing. Tim naturally needed to draw a clear line between them. Chen Zhao thought about it. It probably had nothing to do with him. However, Amelia was still a friend and a business partner. After hanging up with Tim, Chen Zhao picked up Amira's phone. "Amira, how have you been?" "Nothing good, nothing bad." "What's up? Do you need a loan?" "I can offer you the lowest interest rate." Amira's professional habit. This was Amira's professional habit, even though she knew that Chen Zhao probably had more cash than the bank. This meant that Chen Zhao couldn't be attacked at all. Most capitalists had a certain debt ratio. Even their personal assets like cars, houses, and yachts weren't enough, not to mention their companies. Most of the time, they would buy with loans. Even if they had enough money, they would still choose to buy with loans. This was because they needed to keep more cash for investment or reserve. This was a special rule given by this era. Therefore, most listed companies would have a certain percentage of shares in the hands of banks. But Chen Zhao was different. Other than the 5% shares of Mountain Beer that he'd sold to Amira, he hadn't mortgaged any shares. Moreover, the 5% was owned by Amira, not the bank. Chen Zhao didn't owe the bank any money. Instead, it was his cash. He was currently Amira's biggest cash customer. If Qin Zhao had to withdraw all the money one day, Amira would probably lose his position as the manager of the branch. It could be said that Qin Zhao's current assets could already affect the bank's decision-making power, even if it was indirectly. To effectively manage and invest Qin Zhao's cash, the bank even set up an investment management team led by Andrews to help Qin Zhao manage the cash. I'm here to tell you something. Qin Zhao was not interested in Amira's promotion at all. As the old saying went, he could just deposit his money in the bank and earn interest. He signed a contract with the bank, and the guaranteed annual interest rate of the money was 2%. At the same time, the bank was responsible for the investment, and the 30% profit that exceeded the annual interest rate belonged to the bank and the investment team. If the annual interest rate was lower than the annual interest rate, the bank would have to make up for the shortfall. What news? Amelia became serious. After all, with Qin Zhao's current status, everything he said and did was to be taken seriously. Moreover, the word inform would make Amira think of something bad. I received news that a group of people in Los Angeles recently bought a large amount of firearms. Their target is unknown. Amira furrowed her brows. I see. Actually, Amira heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Qin Zhao didn't want to transfer the money out, everything would be fine. How much cash did Qin Zhao have now? It was to the extent that they could destroy a bank. For example, she was in charge of Citibank in Los Angeles. Qin Zhao would deposit the money in, and the bank would use it for investment. If Qin Zhao wanted to withdraw the money now, the bank definitely wouldn't be able to. Even if he asked the head office to transfer the money, the head office might not be able to. Then, he could only borrow from other banks, which wouldn't just pay the normal interest rate. With high interest rates, it was easy for problems to occur. That was the principle of one small move affecting the whole body. Once the news of Citibank's funds having problems spread, it would cause a financial shock or even an earthquake. This was Qin Zhao's current strength. Compared to what Amira was afraid of, robbing a bank was child's play. Robbing a bank was just child's play. Even if the robbers went to the Los Angeles headquarters, how much could they rob? Apart from the success rate, how much cash would the bank have for them to rob? 30 years ago, a successful bank robbery might be able to rob hundreds of millions of dollars. But in this era, both banks and individuals were about to completely get rid of paper money. Even banks rarely kept paper money. They only had a small amount as liquid reserves. According to the branch Amira was in charge of, they only had a few tens of millions of paper money in reserve. The value of the bank's assets was hundreds or even thousands of times that of the paper money. However, most of these assets were real estate, such as houses, cars, yachts, planes, and stocks. Robbers couldn't rob these things. So, Amira wasn't worried about robbing a bank at all. Of course, she still had to take precautions. Thank you for your reminder. I'll take precautions. Amira took Qin Zhao's information very seriously. If a bank robbery really succeeded, it would be very disadvantageous for the bank. It wasn't about how much money the robbers took, but the distrust of the depositors, which would lead to a run on the bank. The next day, Amira strengthened the bank's defenses. At noon, there was a moving hot dog cart outside the plaza of Citibank's headquarters in Irvine. There were 2 employees. One was in charge of the cashier, and the other was in charge of making hot dogs and snacks. I realized that if our plan doesn't succeed, we can switch to selling hot dogs. Ha! The money from selling hot dogs isn't enough for our experiment. If we don't complete the immortality experiment, we won't be able to survive. Johnson, do you want to rot like this? Ningtai Johnson was silent for a moment. I don't want to, he said. I haven't lived long enough, especially since this era is much more interesting than the Middle Ages. Just then, 2 modified commercial cars stopped in front of the bank. 20 fully armed people alighted from the cars. Has information about our operation been leaked? How is that possible? Only the 2 of us know. Do you think it's me or you? Chapter 2870. It was Ningtai Johnson and Herm's plan from the start. The 2 of them knew each other very well. They knew the other wouldn't betray each other. After all, their current relationship was one where they were bound together for good or bad. But looking at the bank's actions, they seemed to have realized their intentions. If we didn't leak the information, how did the bank know? Herm couldn't understand. It's the people who sold us the weapons. Ningtai Johnson suddenly thought of this possibility. We bought a large amount of firearms this time. The firearms dealer might have sensed our intentions and sold our information immediately. Those damn people, I'll show them. Those arms dealers are a small problem, but we can't go find them now. Maybe they've already set up a trap and are waiting for us to walk into it. In other words, we can't get the rest of the weapons. We'll deal with this later. Now, we should focus on the proper matters. The 2 quickly calmed down and started planning. How does it feel to control the seed? Herm asked. Ningtai Johnson raised his hands, looked at them, and then clenched them. It feels special. I can sense it, but the transmission is half a beat slower than normal. That's normal. After all, our bodies are dozens of kilometers away from the seed. The transmission of senses is naturally much slower than normal nerves, Herm said. Although our reactions and actions are a beat slower, this can prevent us from being in danger. Even if the seed's body is destroyed, we can still leave and break the connection. Ningtai Johnson nodded. The labyrinth seed had many flaws. But it was very practical. The seed was a byproduct of their research on immortality. They once wanted to create an immortal body and then put their souls into this body. The seed was a part of their immortality plan. However, this plan soon ended in failure. Although the labyrinth seed was a body created by the fusion of many special bloodlines, it was still able to form a body. But they weren't truly immortal. Moreover, it was extremely repulsive to their souls. After the soul entered the seed's body for a short period of time, the seed would quickly decay. They could control it for a short period of time, but it wasn't perfect as a long-term soul vessel. So now, they were only using the labyrinth seeds as puppets that could be controlled remotely. To the people of the spirit world, the lost path seed was perhaps a joke. However, to ordinary people, puppets that were not afraid of death were still a great threat. Citibank's Irvine headquarters has about $50 million in cash reserves. Only $50 million. Herm frowned, clearly not satisfied with this number. He knew how much money they had spent on the research over the past few years. He also knew that they would need more than $50 million in the future. He originally thought that he would be able to earn more money from this operation. $50 million was only enough to solve their urgent problem. However, they were unable to truly maintain it until their research on immortality was completed. Ningtai Johnson glanced at Herm and said, "Don't underestimate this $50 million. This is the bank with the highest reserves in the West Coast. But it's still not enough, unless we find a few more similar targets. This is the first and last time. Any more and we'll be in extreme danger." Ningtai Johnson wasn't a nerd like Herm. He had been beaten up by society for several years. He knew very well that the outside world wasn't really that peaceful, especially for the rich. Especially for the rich, the same mistake would not happen to them a second time. The first time, they could use the labyrinth seeds to attack first. But the second time, other banks would probably be more cautious. And in this aspect, although they possessed extraordinary power, they were still unable to do so. But they weren't professionals after all. They had to rob 2 or 3 big banks in a row. Did they think they were idiots? Ningtai Johnson paused and continued, also, this bank has more than $50 million in cash reserves. Other than the $50 million in cash reserves, what else can they have? Bonds. Stocks. Those things are just waste paper to us. Whether it was bonds or stocks, they had to be converted through proper channels to have value. Robbery was clearly not the way to convert them. Although Herm was a nerd, it didn't mean he didn't know basic social knowledge. Not those financial products. It's gold. Ningtai Johnson said seriously. There's more than $5 billion in gold in this bank. Herm's eyes widened. Really? That much? That's right. Ningtai Johnson nodded. I can confirm it from my source. Herm was just excited when he suddenly calmed down. $2 billion in gold. How heavy is that? About 50 tons, Ningtai Johnson said. Ningtai Johnson said, that's why we're not just using ordinary labyrinth seeds this time. We need at least something like Hercules. In the process of research, they had developed all kinds of labyrinth seeds. One of them was named Hercules. Just like its name, it had terrifying power. But it was short-lived. After activation, it would be useless in less than a day. Of course, whether it was a special type or a normal type, there wasn't much difference between a day and a few days. If it wasn't for the fact that they needed to keep a low profile and avoid the attention and interference of the spiritual world, they would obviously use the most powerful type. Hercules was slightly more normal. At least, they just needed to cover it a little and it wouldn't attract too much attention. When do we do it? 6 in the evening, Ningtai Johnson said. Ningtai Johnson said, this is the time when the other branches transfer the cash over. The bank's business hours are also over. Business hours are over. That means we don't have many hostages. Chapter 2871. Because of the hostages, the police couldn't use heavy weapons. Also, because the bank was built with a nuclear bomb defense. The police had no idea what was going on inside the bank. After watching for 10 minutes, Chen Zhao lost interest. He didn't see the gunfight he was looking forward to. There was only this endless stalemate. The criminals inside couldn't get out, and the police outside couldn't get in either. Of course, the two parties involved weren't as relaxed as the audience. Amira's face was green. She looked at the security captain who was reporting the situation to her. Is this the foolproof plan you told me? Amira had just told the captain this morning to increase the security. But this happened last night. Anyone else wouldn't be happy. Miss Amira, the criminals are trapped inside the bank. They have nowhere to go. That better be the case. Amira looked at the captain coldly. If there's any damage in the bank, you better prepare for the aftermath. The captain was obviously not a good person. Amira had hired him because he wasn't a good person. But because of this, he could be threatened by Amira and even controlled by her. If he still wanted to live in peace, if he still wanted to live a peaceful life with his family. The captain was helpless. Of course, he knew what Amira meant. But Amira was someone he couldn't afford to offend. Amira was completely different from the people he'd interacted with in the past. Amira paid him a high salary because of his uniqueness. But once he lost his value, Amira would demand more from him. After a while, Amira calmed down a little. Is there a way to avoid the police and solve the problem ourselves? Miss Amira, our biggest problem now is the same as the police's. It's the impenetrable outer wall of the bank. It's a defense that can withstand a nuclear bomb. The only way to break through is through the front door, but if it's the front door, we can't avoid the police at all. What about below? I remember it's the sewer, right? It's the same below, but the distance from the inside of the bank to the sewer is 20 meters. The concrete foundation is thicker than the outer wall. Is there no other way to break through? Amira asked. The captain smiled bitterly. That was a bank. If it was so easy to break through, then why did he become a security captain? He would have gone to rob a bank. He didn't understand what those criminals were thinking. But he felt that all the gangsters' efforts were in vain. They were now trapped in that turtle shell. Although they could not attack from the outside for the time being. But they couldn't get out either. Everything he was doing now was just stalling for time. He felt that Amelia did not need to be so anxious at all. In any case, those criminals couldn't take the money at all. At this moment, the ground shook slightly. After about 10 seconds, he heard a loud noise. Bang! Amira and the security chief exchanged glances. What happened? The bank. The security captain quickly determined the direction of the explosion. They weren't too far from the bank, only about a block away. That was because they could obtain first-hand information about the situation here. Go to the bank immediately. Amira screamed. But right now, it's too faster. Amira could not imagine how much damage an explosion of this magnitude would cause if it happened inside the bank. The security chief could only drive in the direction of the bank. As soon as they reached the periphery of the bank, they saw the police officers surrounding the perimeter. Although the explosion didn't happen right in front of them. But the impact of the huge explosion inside the bank still caused huge casualties to the police officers outside the perimeter. As far as the eye could see, everywhere they passed was a scene of devastation. All the glass windows and doors of the bank had been destroyed. Amira's body trembled slightly. There were also several news outlets here. She couldn't imagine how she and the bank would be criticized tomorrow. Regardless of whether she was a victim or not, the media and the public wouldn't care. In their eyes, she was just a capitalist. It was her negligence that led to this accident. Amira's breathing quickened. Although she wouldn't lose her wealth because of this. But her position was likely to be in jeopardy because of this. After all, there were many people on the board who coveted her position. They would never miss this opportunity to kick her when she was down. Let's go in and see what's going on, Amira said. Miss Amira, the situation inside is unclear. It's too dangerous. Amira ignored the security chief's dissuasion and walked straight inside. The security chief gritted his teeth and followed Amira's footsteps. Right now, the inside of the bank was shrouded in fog. Everything was destroyed by the huge explosion. To the vault, Amira said. The security chief gulped. In the bank, the only place that could withstand the impact of such an explosion was the vault. Judging from the speed of their arrival and the situation of the police outside. Those criminals probably hadn't come out of the bank yet. Therefore, the possibility of them hiding in the vault was very high. And judging from the brutal methods of these criminals. Once they encountered the criminals, they could only shoot at each other endlessly. Miss Amira, those criminals probably haven't left yet. If you don't want to go, I'll go myself. Amira snatched the gun from the security chief's hand and headed straight for the vault. The security chief hurried to Amira's side. At the same time, he tried his best to get the gun back from Amira. The gun was obviously more useful in his hands. He knew very well that even if an ordinary person had a weapon, they probably wouldn't dare to fire when they were in danger. The security chief carefully cleared the way in front. The vault passageway wasn't too badly damaged. In front of them was the vault's security door, which was still intact. The security chief looked at Amira. Amira hesitated for a moment but finally gave up on the idea of opening the vault's security door. "Wait for the police outside to come in," Amira said. Although she was furious, she didn't lose her mind. If those criminals were hiding behind the security door, the security chief's gun was definitely no match for those criminals. A few minutes later, the police came in. They were worried that something might have happened when they saw Amira rush in. Although they had suffered heavy losses, nothing could happen to Amira. After the police arrived, Amira keyed in the security door's password and fingerprint recognition. As soon as the security door opened, screams and chaos came from inside. More than 10 guns were pointed inside, but Amira could see them clearly. There were no criminals behind the security door. They were all bank employees. More than 10 police officers entered the vault one after another. There was no trace of the criminals. Amira grabbed a bank clerk and roared fiercely, "Where is he? Where are those damned scums? Where are they hiding?" The male employee, who was grabbed by Amira, was obviously frightened. He looked at Amira in horror and looked like he was about to cry. Perhaps in his eyes, Amira was a great demon at this moment. "Miss Amira, please calm down, calm down." If not for the 2 police officers holding Amira back, the male employee might have been driven mad by Amira. "Miss Amira, the most important thing now is to check the damage." Chapter 2872. How is that possible? Amira's expression changed. "Why is all the gold gone? All in the air. How many people are there?" "According to preliminary estimates, about 6 people. "Impossible," Amira said. 6 people can't move 50 tons of gold. Each gold bar weighs 1 kilogram. She didn't care about the loss earlier because she thought that the robbers would at most steal some cash. But now, not only had they lost cash, but the most important gold as well. This was a big problem, a very big one. What did 50 tons of gold mean? Even her entire family would be in great pain. Even if the gold wasn't hers, at least not all of it was hers. The gold belonged to the bank. It was worth $2.5 billion. The real value of the gold was much higher than $2.5 billion. The gold was used to control financial shocks and stabilize the bank stocks. Now that this batch of gold had been lost, both her family and the bank itself would be greatly impacted. Amira's eyes flickered. "Sorry, I need to make a call." Amelia ran outside in a hurry. After looking around, she dialed the number. "Hey, Chen, I need your help." "Amira, you don't want me to help you arrest the robbers, do you? You should find the police. I'm not more professional than them." Chen Zhao was telling the truth. Apart from being stronger than the police, he didn't have any advantages over them. Moreover, arresting robbers didn't require much combat power. Even if he found the Marines, they might not be more useful than the police. "No, I want to borrow money." "Borrow money? Are you kidding me? You run a bank. You want to borrow money from me?" "More accurately, I want to borrow gold," Amira said. "Part of the gold I bought from you on behalf of the bank was stolen. This news can't be leaked. If it gets out, my family and I will be done for." "Is it that serious?" Amira sighed. She wouldn't go bankrupt, but she would definitely be kicked out of the board. Her father would also be implicated because of this, and the entire family might not be able to recover from this setback. So the news of the gold being stolen must be. It must not be leaked. Before she found the gold, she had to find a replacement. She had to answer to both the public and the board. Of course, she had to get the stolen gold back too. I don't have a lot of gold, Chen Zhao said, troubled. Even if he had a lot of gold, not to mention dozens of tons, he could even take out hundreds or thousands of tons. But the consequences would be severe too. So unless it was necessary, he wouldn't agree to Amira's request. Even if they were friends and business partners. If the amount of gold he had was exposed, the whole world would probably come to kill him. There was simply too much gold. So much that it could make all the world's finance jump. Chen Zhao said, Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao. I can help you ask, but I can't guarantee anything. Alright, I need 50 tons of gold. The sooner, the better. Amira knew that Chen Zhao did, even though he didn't want to admit it. Chen Zhao, Chin. After a moment of silence, Chen Zhao asked, what's the earliest time? The sooner the better. If it's possible, I hope your friend can help me prepare it tonight. Chen Zhao was silent for a long time. My friend has 50 tons of gold in Warehouse 01 at Hill Pier. Send someone to get it. Oh, you'd better find enough people to escort it. Okay, thank you. Amira hung up quickly. She wanted to continue thanking Chen Zhao on the phone. But time didn't allow it. Her family would ask about the situation in half an hour. The gold theft couldn't be kept a secret for long. She needed to replenish the gold as soon as possible. After hanging up, Amira turned around and saw the security captain walking toward her. Ms. Amira, it's my mistake. I'll take responsibility. Amira stared at the security captain with a cold face. I don't care how you're going to take responsibility after this. Before that, you need to help me solve the problem. Contact your former colleagues. Even if you have to turn Los Angeles upside down, you need to find those bastards and place their heads and my gold in front of me. The captain nodded. I will. This group of people had disgraced him. It also pissed him off. I've already found some clues about them in the sewers, the captain said. They might be good at robbing, but they're not good at hiding their tracks. Amira glanced at the captain, who felt even more awkward. Not long ago, he'd said confidently that the sewers couldn't be an escape route. But reality proved that his imagination was still too low. The culprit had used highly concentrated Jadon to destroy the foundation. Of course, the actual operation was more complicated. To put it simply, they'd stuffed the Jadon into the pipe under the toilet. The police had already collected and tested the traces at the scene of the explosion, but the results weren't out yet. They still didn't know what kind of Jadon the culprit had used. But to be able to create a 1-meter hole in the foundation was already a military chemical Jadon. Can you promise to find them? Yes, I can promise you, Ms. Amira. As long as you can find them and capture them, I won't pursue your mistake, Amira said. And I'll pay for everything. 3 days. I only need 3 days, the captain said decisively. Also, contact your colleagues now and have them go to Hill Pier to help me transport a batch of goods. Goods? The captain was confused. What goods? What goods at this time? Gold, Amira said. Just then, Amira's phone rang. Dad, the situation isn't as bad as you think. That's just a random report from the media. No, the gold wasn't lost, it's just a rumor. If you don't believe me, you can watch the press conference tomorrow. Amira's tone was calm. I know. I understand. This is a mistake on my part. I did lose some cash reserves, but everything is still under control. Amira hung up the phone and let out a long sigh. This was just an appetizer. After all, it was her father who wouldn't embarrass her too much. But the board of directors might not. If she couldn't appease them, the situation would completely go out of control. Chapter 2873. We seem to have been exposed. Ningtai Johnson looked at the monitor. There had been people loitering outside their base since yesterday. Those people hadn't figured out their location yet. But they should be able to find the entrance soon. Glanced at Ningtai Johnson in dissatisfaction. You should be responsible for cleaning up. You didn't clean up our traces, so it's your responsibility. Ningtai Johnson's face darkened. He thought he'd cleaned up all traces. But he wasn't a professional in this area. The so-called cleanup actually left a lot of traces in the eyes of professionals. Their base was inside the mountain and the entrance was hidden with magic. But they couldn't guarantee that magic could stop those people from entering. If these people continue loitering outside, they'll find the entrance sooner or later, Ningtai Johnson said. Instead of that, why don't we just kill them all? What do you plan to do? Let them in, Ningtai Johnson said. Ningtai Johnson said, there are only around 20 people outside. It's not hard to deal with them, but if they accidentally find the entrance, it's hard to guarantee that they won't pass the information to others. By then, we will never have a chance to live in peace. But if you let them in, won't they send the information? We can't control when they find the entrance, but I can control when they enter, Ningtai Johnson said. Ningtai Johnson's thought process was clear. If they slowly explored outside, they'd figure out their concealment magic sooner or later. After all, concealment magic wasn't invisibility magic. Even a normal person had a chance to see through it. Once they figured it out, they'd send the information. Then the two of them would be like turtles in a jar. Even though their base still had a certain amount of combat power, it wouldn't be a problem to block a few waves of attacks. What they were afraid of was that the people outside would suspect something. Once they were discovered by the people in the spiritual world, then they'd be in big trouble. Although the spiritual world in North America was relatively weak, they were afraid that the government would find powerful people in Europe or the East to deal with them. To be honest, both of them started out as researchers. After sleeping for a few hundred years, one continued to stay in the house while the other went into finance. Not a single one of them went to consolidate their strength. Their strongest point now wasn't their own magic. Instead, it was the Lost Path seed that they had researched. These Maze Dao seeds were quite powerful. But the key problem was that the number of Lost Path seeds was also very limited. If they had enough resources, they would be able to produce more labyrinth seeds endlessly. However, they were now trapped here. Although they had a lot of money in their hands, they had nowhere to spend it. Therefore, the most important thing now was to get rid of those people outside. Frosa, we've been searching for 2 days. Are you sure we're not in the wrong place? Flosa was the head of security, and the people around him were his former colleagues, or rather, his subordinates. A few years ago, the mercenary group he led could be considered famous in the mercenary world. However, the change in the mercenary world was very fast. Mercenaries either died, saved up enough money, or quit because they were tired of the rain of bullets. Flosa was also one of them. He was tired of his old life. Then, he left the mercenary team. This time, for the sake of his own work, he had no choice but to gather his colleagues again. Of course, there were a few unfamiliar faces among them. They didn't really respect him, the former guild leader. Fortunately, the current leader was appointed by him in the past. And he still had a lot of trust in Flosa. So this time, the command was still given to Flosa. Flosa started from the sewers back then. Indeed, he found some traces. Following these traces, Flosa tracked them to this forest. This forest was quite vast. Moreover, it was an area that hadn't been developed before. Therefore, the landscape was quite complicated. The tracks were cut off near here. They had been wandering around here for 3 days. Although there were members who raised doubts one after another. But Flosa still believed in his judgment. There's no mistake. These bandits' method of covering their tracks is too old-fashioned. Although the traces disappeared around here, our general direction can't be wrong, Flosa said. Hearing Flosa say so, the others didn't say anything else. Flosa, look, there seems to be a cave over there. Cave? We've been wandering around here for 2 days. If there's a cave, how can we only find it now? Flosa was a little doubtful. After all, he still had confidence in his old friends. Fighting in the wild was their strong suit. It was impossible for them to wander around for a few days without finding a cave right under their nose. Even with their abilities, it was something that could be done in a minute. Every one of them had a very sharp eye. They could basically determine the terrain in the wild with just a glance. A cave, even if it was covered in shrubs and grass, could hardly escape their eyes. But Flosa followed the direction of his subordinates and indeed saw a cave. This made it a little hard for Flosa to accept that there really was a cave. He had so many people, but none of them found it. Let's go take a look. Oro, you and your team stay here. I feel that there's something wrong with that cave. Use the communicator to keep in touch with us at all times. Yes, Mr. Flosa. Although Oro felt that Flosa was being too careful. But he still followed Flosa's orders. After all, he had to become a qualified mercenary. First of all, it wasn't how high his combat level was, but that he had to obey orders. Auro and his team of 5 stayed where they were, waiting for Froshaw and the others. Mr. Flosa, did you find anything in the cave? Russell, nothing so far. This cave is very deep, and there seems to be a source of interference here. There seems to be something in front. Boom. At this moment, the sound of gunfire came from the communicator. Oro raised his head and looked at the cave. Strange, the sound of intense gunfire coming from the communicator. Why was the cave so quiet? Wasn't this too abnormal? Flosa and the others shouldn't have been gone for too long. And in a space like the cave, the sound should be more obvious. Oro. Leave there, leave there. Bring the news back to Miss Amira. Damn it. We've been tricked. These aren't bandits at all. Boom, Oro and his team members were a little frightened. They didn't understand what was going on. But it seemed that most of Flosa's men were in big trouble. Oro and the others looked at each other. Go. Leave here. Amira glanced at Oro and then at Chen Zhao. All right, let him calm down a bit. Chen Zhao sat on the bed and looked at Oro, who was wrapped from head to toe. Let me guess what you saw. A monster. Or something cruel. Oro's body trembled slightly. Seeing Oro's reaction, Chen Zhao continued, the cruelest scene I've seen is cannibalism. Have you seen it before? Don't say any more, don't say any more. Is it a human cannibalism or a monster cannibalism? Chen Zhao asked immediately. Don't ask any more, Oro roared hysterically. You don't understand. The scenes in the movies are different from reality. No, I understand, Chen Zhao said. How do you understand? You're just saying it. Ha! What do you think Amira is here for? Oro couldn't help but poke his head out from the tightly wrapped sheets and look at Chen Zhao seriously. What? Are you a psychic? Or an exorcist? I know how to be a psychic and exorcist, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. But I'm a doctor. Really? Then you've met many patients, right? Probably. Can this be healed? Oro's arm reached out from the sheets. Chen Zhao looked at Oro's arm. There was a layer of flesh covering the skin. It clearly wasn't Oro's own. The flesh was still wriggling slowly. It looked disgusting. Chen Zhao reached out and grabbed Oro's elbow. Don't move. Oro was stunned. He didn't think that Chen Zhao wouldn't be scared off. Amira had found a doctor for him before. When the doctor saw his arm, he cried out in shock. Just then, Oro felt Chen Zhao's grip tighten. Oro couldn't help but look at his arm. The flesh on his arm seemed to feel the power too. It wriggled even faster. This is undead flesh, Chen Zhao said. This thing will absorb a person's life force, but it's not hard to get rid of it. As long as you block the port, it'll fall off due to lack of nutrients. As expected, a few minutes later, the undead flesh fell off Oro's arm. Undead flesh was actually a type of undead creature. It just looked like a piece of meat. In reality, it had a certain level of individual thought. However, undead flesh had low intelligence. It attached itself to the host and slowly absorbed the host's life force. When the host died, it would be transferred to another host. Chen Zhao's method could basically be done by ordinary people too. There were actually other methods, but they clearly couldn't be done by ordinary people. For example, soaking it in holy water or casting a curse on it. Undead flesh was just a weak undead creature. It didn't have any resistance to magic and could be killed in a few hits. After the undead flesh left Oro's arm, it wriggled on the ground. Suddenly, it bounced up and shot at Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao scooped it up and pinched it in his hand. The undead flesh immediately wanted to attach itself to Chen Zhao's palm. Oro's face was filled with disbelief. He didn't think that Chen Zhao could really get rid of it. Chapter 2875. As Oro spoke, he looked at his arm. The undead flesh was gone, but Oro was still fearful. However, Oro still felt some lingering fear. He took a deep breath and said, "Those things are being controlled by someone." Chen Zhao listened to Oro's narration quietly. Bank robberies by people from the supernatural world had happened in the LA area. It was clear that this was his job. In Oro's narration, there was a person, or rather a human-like monster, who was completely naked. Strange spikes grew out of the person's body. After piercing into the person's body, the spikes would suck the person's blood. Long Island Expressway Sang National Park, specific location, Chen Zhao said. Oro looked up at Chen Zhao. You want to go? Are you crazy? Don't you understand? Or do you think I'm joking? No, I understand. I also know you're not joking, but so what? Do you think I'm here to talk to you? Or is he here to help you heal? Oro looked at Chen Zhao seriously. Long Island Expressway Sang National Park. After entering from the highway, go north for about 30 kilometers. It's roughly in that area. Roughly? What I need are more detailed coordinates. Oro's location was too vague. It wasn't like finding a needle in a haystack, but it wasn't that easy either. Even if Chen Zhao used his little world to scan, it would take a long time. How can I have the exact coordinates? Do you want me to mark the latitude and longitude for you? I can't do that. If you take me there, can you find it? Wait. I didn't say I'm going with you. I don't want to go there again. I don't want to die. Don't worry. You'll be safe with me. Bullshit. People who say that in horror movies usually die horribly. Chen Zhao's words reminded him of the scenes in horror movies where people would seek death. Basically, they knew there was a tiger on the mountain, but they still wanted to go there. I'm afraid you don't have a choice. I do. Half an hour later, Oro sat in the passenger seat with a dejected expression. He tried to resist. As a mercenary with a backbone, he was dragged out of the villa by his neck. Yamla and her bodyguard just watched. He just looked at her without a care in the world. Oro had a weapon, and he tried to use it. However, in the face of absolute power, the weapons in his hands were equivalent to toys. Mr. Chen, I'm serious. You're courting death. We can't deal with that thing. More accurately, you can't handle it, Chen Zhao replied to Oro's complaint as he drove. Which way? That road. Chen Zhao turned the car onto a secluded path. After Oro got in the car, he didn't refuse to give Chen Zhao directions anymore. You really don't have to worry. I know where he came from. In fact, I'm in charge of this. But you said that your profession is a doctor. There's nothing I can do about it. My side job is doing better than my main job. It's a headache for me. Also, apart from being an exorcist and a doctor, I'm also a tycoon, a philanthropist, and a good father. No one would use a good father as a title. Now there is. You said that you're an exorcist. Show me your skills so that I can feel at ease. There's an evil spirit in the back seat. He's covered in bullet holes and he's been staring at you. Oro shuddered all over. He turned his head abruptly, but the back seat was empty. Are you messing with me? No, I'm serious. It should be someone you killed. It's probably someone in the same industry, or maybe a comrade. I've killed many people. If there's really an evil spirit following me, there won't be just one. Ha! Are you that confident in this aspect? Chen Zhao chuckled. Since Oro was a mercenary, it was normal for mercenaries to kill people, so there was nothing to criticize. Plus, there was no such thing as good or bad in this industry. The so-called good and evil were just a matter of position. Do you want to identify the people you killed in the past? Chen Zhao asked. Oro's expression was conflicted. After a long hesitation, he said, "Can you let me see?" Look in the rearview mirror. Oro raised his head to look at the rearview mirror. In that instant, he saw a man covered in bruises from head to toe. His face, chest, and limbs were all covered in bullet holes. Yair! Oro exclaimed after recovering from the shock. You seem to be familiar with this evil spirit. Is he your colleague? He's my brother, Oro said, his face ashen. You killed him. No, how could that be? I would never shoot my brother, Oro said, gritting his teeth. Oro said through clenched teeth. He looked at the rearview mirror again. Yell, how did you die? He can't hear you, just like how you can't hear me, Chen Zhao said. Do you have any grudges with him? No, we're brothers. We might have disputes, but there's no conflict. So, he's not here for revenge. Oro's heart was heavy. Can you help me communicate with him? You should know how, right? No, but I know someone who can. Chen Zhao indeed didn't know this spell. Even if Oro could see Yair now, it was because Chen Zhao had used his power to make Yair's reflection in the rearview mirror. However, psychic spells weren't very advanced. One didn't even need to actively use it. They just needed to find an area with dense spiritual qi. Yair could appear before Oro by himself. Of course, Chen Zhao couldn't let Oro and Yair go to his house. But introducing one or two spiritualists was no problem. By now, Oro had already accepted the fact that Qin Zhao was a spiritualist. Are you sure you can deal with those monsters? I heard that psychic and exorcism are two different systems. Are you okay with that? Psychic is my side job. Exorcism is my main job. In fact, exorcism isn't my main job either. Maintaining the peace and stability of the spiritual world is my main job. Then your main job as a doctor, that's my main job, but I don't have a medical license. Most of the time, I practice medicine illegally. In other words, you're a doctor, but not a professional. Wait. I said illegal, not unprofessional. Even if you lose a limb, I can help you grow it back. Oro obviously didn't believe Qin Zhao. Instead, he was even more suspicious of Qin Zhao. He felt that Qin Zhao knew everything, but was not good at anything. This made him very doubtful about his journey as a guide. How about we go earlier tomorrow? Even if we get there now, it's already dark. If we go through the forest, it'll probably be past midnight. What if the person hidden here is in your hand? If the other party was really in this hand, why would he rob a bank? He could just lie on the ground and people would give him money. Did anyone give you money? How else do you think I became rich? There really is. Oro had always been doubtful of Qin Zhao's claims of his combat ability being so powerful. But when it came to giving money away, Oro had no doubts about it, and he even looked forward to it. This might be a common human trait, the desire to be lazy and gluttonous. Qin Zhao snickered and continued forward. After walking in the forest for a few hours, Oro couldn't walk anymore. Sit down and rest. Qin Zhao tossed Oro a glass of his beer. As he opened the can, Oro asked, "Are you sure we want to rest now? You can choose to continue." Of course I don't care. In the end, Oro decided to respect Qin Zhao's decision. Where did you hide the beer? Anything you can't understand can be categorized as magic. Oro was speechless. Okay, this explanation was reasonable. Suddenly, there was a sound from the bushes in front and a faint movement. Oro immediately stopped. There's something in front. Qin Zhao glanced at the bushes, his face expressionless. Just then, the thing under the bushes slowly propped itself up. It was a jaguar, an adult American tiger. Oro's scalp tingled. No way, so unlucky. He didn't die to those monsters. Would he die to a jaguar? As a professional mercenary, Oro didn't think he could tear a tiger apart. Oro did not really think that he could tear apart Bear Splitter and Tiger. Oro didn't really think he could tear a bear apart. Oro didn't think he could tear a bear apart. It was the largest carnivorous cat in the American continent. Even a crocodile twice its weight couldn't defeat it, even in the water. Even a crocodile twice its weight couldn't beat it, even in the water. This thing was just so fierce. It was a leopard, but it was called a jaguar. The difference between an ordinary person and a mercenary was a matter of 5 seconds or 6 seconds. As for the ratio of victory between a tiger and a human, the most common one was Wusong fighting a tiger. However, there were hundreds of cases of tigers injuring humans every year, so the chance of a human winning against a tiger was 1 in 10,000. Oro glanced at Qin Zhao beside him. He was wondering if Qin Zhao's magic could deal with this thing. But then, Qin Zhao walked forward on his own. Petting the jaguar, he smiled. Such a cute cat. I have a few at home too. Oro's scalp tingled. This thing was different from the ones at home. But the jaguar didn't seem to want to hurt Qin Zhao. It even enjoyed Qin Zhao petting its fur. I'm busy. here's a gift. Chen Zhao tossed a piece of meat. The jaguar caught it and ran away. Oro looked at Chen Zhao with lingering fear. You used magic on it. Do I need to use magic on it? I'm a druid. Oro's eyes widened. Druid? There really are druids. It's the real deal. You can control it. Druids call it control and communication. We're really close to nature. Oro was really scared. He would believe anything Chen Zhao said now. After all, the truth was right in front of him. Can you make it fight for you? Are you kidding? We druids need a kitten to fight for us. Oro looked at Chen Zhao seriously. I understand. You're here because some evil sorcerer used evil magic to go against nature, so you're here to eradicate evil. No, I just don't like him. However, Oro was in no mood to mourn for them. Because he felt that he might follow in their footsteps. He felt that his body was completely stiff and his limbs were not listening to him. The deeper they went, the more tragic the scene became. Mr. Chen, don't you think, this doesn't look like an entrance, more like. Oro's voice was trembling. You want to say that this is more like a place to raise pets, right? Oro's expression became even more stiff. He wanted to say that this looked like a ranch. Of course, it definitely wouldn't be cattle or sheep. We still have to go in. Of course, we're already here, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. But, didn't you see the things along the way? I said I'm a professional. No, you said you're an amateur. Chen Zhao suddenly stopped. Oro looked at Chen Zhao and suddenly had a bad feeling. What's wrong? Shine the light on the wall in front of us. Oro knew that Chen Zhao must have found something bad. He didn't want to, but his body was honest. The moment the light swept across the cave wall, the light disappeared. He saw pieces of flower petals. More accurately, petals' mouths. There were many unknown creatures on the wall. They were grayish-white and slightly smaller than adults. But their mouths were wide open like petals. It felt like their chrysanthemums were in the wrong place. What? What are those? Oro's teeth were chattering. I don't know. They don't look like normal creatures. Look. Oro felt that Chen Zhao's choice of words was rather careless. Was there a need to look? They weren't normal creatures at all, okay? They seem. Oro gulped. They don't seem to have noticed us. Yes, Chen Zhao said. They probably rely on their hearing, so we better be quiet. Chen Zhao had never seen these things before. He didn't know how they sensed enemies and prey. Oro immediately covered his mouth and didn't dare to make a sound. Of course, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're light-sensitive creatures, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. At the same time, he walked deeper into the forest. As for the things above him, as long as they didn't wake up, Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered to touch them. But Oro really couldn't be unmoved. The things above their heads were simply too terrifying. But when Chen Zhao walked past the chrysanthemum beasts, they didn't move at all. Chen Zhao was a bit curious. If they were light-sensitive creatures, the light just now should have woken them up. If they relied on their hearing, his and Oro's conversation should have been enough to wake them up. Normally, if they didn't have vision and relied on other senses, they would stand out in certain aspects. But these chrysanthemum beasts didn't seem to rely on light or hearing. That was what surprised Chen Zhao. Suddenly, Oro fired a shot into the darkness. Chen Zhao looked at Oro in surprise. The moment the shot rang out, Chen Zhao saw that something had been hid in the darkness. Chen Zhao actually hadn't noticed it himself. Chen Zhao relied too much on his senses. This was his advantage. But in this place where the auras were mixed up, Chen Zhao's senses actually couldn't detect anything nearby. That thing wasn't very strong. Oro shot it twice in the head. "You should thank me," Oro said. "Otherwise, you'd be disemboweled already." But just then, the chrysanthemum beasts above them seemed to show signs of waking up. "I think I know how these things wake up." "What?" Oro asked in surprise. "The smell of blood." Chapter 2878. The chrysanthemum beasts started falling from the walls and ceiling. But they weren't attacking Chen Zhao and Oro. Instead, they pounced at the thing Oro had shot. Oro kept his gun raised. He was extremely nervous. The thing Oro had shot was quickly cleaned up by the chrysanthemum beasts. But they clearly weren't satisfied with so many chrysanthemum beasts. Their way of biting their prey was rather unique. They would stick their chrysanthemums on the prey and the muscles on the petals would move, driving their teeth to tear the prey apart. This eating method was clearly different from that of regular beasts. Chen Zhao looked at the chrysanthemum beasts with interest. The chrysanthemum beasts started searching for scents in the air. Then they all turned toward Chen Zhao and Oro. They woke up because of the smell of blood, but that didn't mean they weren't sensitive to other scents. Especially since they hadn't been satisfied yet. Oro couldn't hold it in and shot a chrysanthemum beast. The beast's mouth was hit. But it didn't fall. Clearly, guns weren't a threat to it. The muscle density is very high and the skin is very tough, Chen Zhao analyzed. Even the muscle tissue in its mouth can't threaten it with bullets. Now isn't the time to analyze this. What should we do? The chrysanthemum beasts had blocked their path of retreat. Oro had a feeling that it wouldn't be long before he would meet his comrades. Crack! Suddenly, Oro heard a strange sound. It sounded like bones breaking, but it was even louder than what he remembered. He looked up and saw that Chen Zhao had grabbed a chrysanthemum beast without him knowing. The beast's neck was hanging askew as if it had no bones. Oro widened his eyes and stared at Chen Zhao in shock. The chrysanthemum beast was even bigger than an adult. Chen Zhao could grab it with one hand. Chen Zhao casually tossed the beast with the broken neck aside. The force on the tibia is at least 300 kilograms. Normal people really can't deal with this thing. The other chrysanthemum beasts were immediately attracted by the corpse and swarmed over. Oro was a little dumbfounded at the sight. "How did you kill it?" "I broke its neck." "But, how did you do it?" "That thing is at least 100 kilograms. And look at its limbs. They're ridiculously thick." "I told you, I'm a professional." Chen Zhao clapped his hands and continued walking. The chrysanthemum beasts didn't continue to attack them. They were more concerned about the food in front of them, even if it was their own kind. However, he stopped after a few steps. Oro caught up. "Why aren't you moving?" Chen Zhao pointed at the huge pit before them. This deep pit was a sea of bright red, and there were also a large number of skeletons and remains. This was really a farm. In this deep pit, there were dozens of monsters of different shapes and sizes. "Looks like we found the wrong place. This is just a farm, not a place where those people are hiding." At this moment, a giant multicolored beast about 4 meters long stared at the two people at the entrance. The multicolored beast moved and jumped out of the pit that was more than 20 meters deep. This astonishing jumping ability gave Oro quite a fright. And from the looks of it, it seemed like they were planning on taking Chinzhou and Oro away in one go. The huge claws and teeth were about to fall on his body. Oro was so frightened that he hugged his head and squatted down. But in the next instant, he heard a howl. He looked up and saw that the multicolored beast had been kicked over and had fallen back into the deep pit. The other monsters in the deep pit also noticed the two. They were different from the chrysanthemum beasts before. Chrysanthemum beasts weren't very intelligent. They were wild beasts driven by hunger. The monsters in this deep pit all had extremely strong combat power, and all of them were intelligent. They weren't in a hurry to deal with the corpse of their comrade that Chinzhou had kicked back. Instead, they kept staring at Chinzhou. But Chinzhou really wasn't interested in them. Just as they were itching to attack Chinzhou and Oro, Chinzhou's eyes hardened. Chinzhou's eyes hardened. Instantly, all the monsters froze. In the past, Chinzhou didn't believe that he could scare enemies with his aura. Aura was too blurry. At most, he could only use a strong aura to shock the opponent. But recently, Chinzhou felt that he'd grasped a trick. It was possible to use aura to shock the opponent, as long as his aura was strong enough. Of course, aura didn't have much meaning in actual combat. Opponents of the same level wouldn't be shocked by Chinzhou's aura. Chinzhou could only use his aura to scare these little kids before him. Let's go. Chinzhou patted Oro's shoulder. Oro glanced at the huge monsters in the deep pit. Are you sure it's okay for us to turn around and leave like this? They might think that we're too small. Oro was still a bit hesitant. It wasn't a wise choice to turn his back on these ferocious-looking monsters. But when he saw Chinzhou turn around and leave, he still followed carefully. But when he left, he still looked back every 3 steps. If you can't bear to leave, you can choose to stay. They'll probably treat you very warmly. What's with those things? Why aren't they attacking us? I mean, other than the first one. Oro's mind was filled with questions. And what's with the first monster? Why did it suddenly fall down? Don't ask. It's magic if you ask. Since this isn't where the bandits are hiding, where are they? Have we been in the wrong place all along? No, we're not. This place isn't formed naturally. All the monsters here are domesticated. They're not wild animals, so the bandits must be hiding nearby. How do we find them? Apart from this cave, I don't know any other hiding places. Chinzhou rubbed his forehead. It was indeed a bit troublesome for the bandits to hide in the belly of the mountain. Although the perception of his pocket world could seep into physical objects, it would take some time. It's a bit troublesome, but it's okay. Since I'm here, I don't plan on going back empty-handed, Chinzhou said. Oro followed behind Chinzhou, trembling. When he reached where the chrysanthemum beasts were, they had already gone back to sleep. They didn't care about their food passing by. When they walked out of the cave, Chinzhou's pocket world started seeping in. But to Chinzhou's surprise, he didn't use too much strength, and he found it. More accurately, he found the entrance and used a physical object to block it, but it wasn't very thick. Because Chinzhou had found this cave before, he thought it was the entrance, so he didn't investigate further. The second time, he found it much easier than expected. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.